Let me
Live.
know.
We're live.
We are live? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to copy the link and post it that we
Post
go.
it on Facebook.
I always do, yeah. Okay, we are live. Share.
Let's
Yeah,
go
bro,
ahead and
post it to your page. Just go to the Dare Me page, copy the link or the share. You know what I mean? And then go.
Jeremy's got a page on Facebook.
Yeah, haven't you ever been there?
Yeah.
It's called the Dare Me Facebook page. And then you can just hit share, copy the link, and put it on your page. Hold on, Jazzy. Boom. There we go. Okay. It is officially on my Facebook page. All right, you ready to do this, Shivang?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and Dean, I'll do the typical, did you get that last video loaded? Yeah, I see you did. Great. We'll do the typical, by the way, turn your phone on silent if it's not, bro.
Yep.
We'll do the typical, once I do the intros and shit, of me recapping the purpose of the show, but I'm going to make it quick and all that stuff. Here, Jazzy. Okay. Got it. Be cool now. All right, we are live. Mics are hot.
Caliente.
Got a couple viewers already. And, yeah, it's going to be hard to monitor the comments. You know, Dean, I was thinking I'd like to do a show and maybe even promote it in a way where, I don't know, I got to come up with the idea of say, hey, man, this is your edition of the show. We want nothing but callers, viewers chiming in. We'll kind of set the stage.
If you
we'll
want,
do
I can
some news.
monitor the comments for you too. I'll just leave it pulled up, see if people comment.
Sure, yeah, because we're going to kind of be going back and forth. So, yeah, Dean, if you don't mind, I have written notes here on when I want to play the various videos. Oh, by the way, Dean, real quick, you hearing me?
Yeah.
Is there any way we can bring up that opioid news pic before we go into the news? Because it's actually there under the videos. Where did I see it? I had it up earlier.
The opioid crisis.
Yeah, yeah, there it is. It's under, you know what I'm talking about. It's there.
Yeah.
It's right above the video clips where it says one breaking news. So maybe we can, Anyway, looks like we got a few viewers now. Hey, y'all. It's going to be a fun show. We go live in 1 minute. You ready to do this, boy?
Ready to do this, baby.
Jazzy got her treats, huh?
Jenny, ready for the show?
Okay. Here we go.
I invited you to this show because you buy me that fucking
That latte? Oh, God.
I did go.
Blood boiling?
I went, but it's going to creep up on me in a half hour, I'm sure. Okay, we are almost ready. You ready, Dean?
Yeah.
All right, let's have a fun show. I'm sure it'll be good. We go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. on average, just in the United States, about 220 people die every single day from an opiate overdose. By the time we finish this show, 8 to 10 people are going to die from an opiate overdose. If we get even one person, one viewer with this program that we might be able to help with some of the information that's shared on here, then it's all worth it. Hey everyone, it's your old pal Glenn Victor. Welcome to the Dare Me podcast. We are so excited for today's show for a few reasons. We are going to be talking about enlightenment again and spirituality. It's been a few since we've talked about those things. And we'll also, of course, be talking about all our usual topics of, drug addiction, recovery from addiction. We've got some news stories we'll cover about the opioid epidemic. Got some current events having to do with recovery coming up. We're going to talk a little bit about music, lots of fun stuff. Right out of the gate, we want to bring in our old pal from Orlando, Florida, Dean Baker, who is standing by live at the Post Effects Digital Studios. There he is. And we also have, I'm so excited to have our first in-studio guest, and you guys recognize that boy Shivang, who's been a guest on the show before. Hey, welcome to both of you guys.
Thank you for having us, Glenn and Dean. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, welcome to the show. Hey, Glenn.
Yeah, well, of course, Shivang is here visiting in Sacramento, so we've got him in the studio, and we had the setup to have guests in studio. It just hadn't transpired that way yet. And so, Shivang, I'm so happy. We did a little extra prep today to make sure the mic was working fine and the camera shot, and we're real excited to have you right here in the studio. And Dean, again, appreciate all your behind-the-scenes work there at the Post Effects Digital Studios in Orlando, keeping us on the air live and handling all the behind-the-scenes stuff. We've got some really cool video we're going to show today, as well as a lot of pics and slides of a trip Shivang and I took this past week to the legendary, the mystical Mount Shasta. And if you're not familiar with Mount Shasta, it is, in fact, a place that draws people and visitors from around the world. And we're going to take a deep dive into what Mount Shasta is all about. And wow, did we have some amazing experiences there, wouldn't you say, Shivang?
Oh, yeah, man. It was breathtaking, to say the least.
Yeah.
I'm excited to talk about it for sure.
Breathtaking at the very least. So anyway, welcome to the show, everyone. I was telling Dean, I messaged Dean last night that we've done so many episodes of this show now that I actually lost track of the number of episodes we did. And I was thinking last week was episode 20, and it was actually episode 19. This is the 20th episode and edition of this podcast that we've done, which is just crazy to me. It just doesn't seem like we've been doing it that long. And so if you're new to the show, we highly encourage you to go to some of the platforms. My favorite is the Dare Me Podcast YouTube channel. I'm always promoting that one because I kind of oversee that one. And I try to keep it nice and clean, uncluttered, and all the episodes in chronological order when you click on the videos tab. And if you do go to the Dare Me Podcast YouTube channel, we appreciate all likes, shares, and especially if you could subscribe because it helps with the algorithms, bringing it up for people who may be looking for information about the topics we discuss and that we're all about. And so, with that being said, I always like to start the show off talking a little bit about and recapping what the show's all about. So, Shivang, we're going to get to our conversation about Mount Shasta shortly. Of course, Dean will, participate in the show as he always does in the conversation as well. But I do always like to recap the purpose of the show. Even though we've done 20 episodes, we get new viewers, new listeners all the time. Someone who may stumble upon the show when we go live, because we are live right now on several different Facebook channels, several different YouTube channels. We're live on Twitter. We're live on LinkedIn. We're live on Threads now, all the things. You get the idea. And we attract a lot of live viewers and listeners. We do also, of course, get most of our views and listeners from the recorded version of the program after it's posted. And, of course, once it's posted, it'll be there till the end of time, probably. And so with all that being said, for anyone who may be new to the show, just always like to recap what it's all about. And so, as the hashtags for our name Dare Me indicate, and I'm sure Dean's going to bring them up here shortly. Yep, there we are, just like clockwork. Thanks, Dean. Those are the topics this show's all about: drugs, addiction, recovery, enlightenment, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about today, and then we also talk about music and exercise. And so, if you look closely, you'll see those are all acronyms for the name Dare Me. And so, for me, Dare Me means a lot of different things, but mainly it meant when I came up with the name for this program, Dare Me to come out about my addiction. Coming out of the closet, as they say. I didn't keep it a secret from people in the recovery community. Certainly knew that, I had struggled with addiction most of my life, but I also come from the corporate world, the professional world, where I chose over the course of my career just to remain silent about it. I didn't discuss it or talk about it at all. And I've been struggling with addiction my whole life. I'm 61 years old. I started partying, using drugs, smoking dope, and all that as a teenager, like a lot of people did. I'm a child of the 70s, was born in the 60s, but really kind of started coming up in the 70s. And everybody partied when I was a teenager, it seemed like, anyways. And it got carried away from me. It spun out of control. And long story short, I got clean for the very first time, just shy of 25 years old. I made my way to my very first Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. And I ended up staying clean for almost 17 years, 16 years and 9 months, and built a life for myself during that time. Went back to school, graduated, got a college degree, started a career, moved to Florida from Michigan, and got married. You get the idea, the whole 9 yards. And then, unfortunately, I had a horrible relapse, and it lasted 5 years. I landed back in a rehab center, a treatment center, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't my first trip, but that was a good trip for me. I went to a place called Brighton up in Michigan, and I got out of there, stayed clean again for over another 5 years. And then I relapsed again. And at the end of the road, y'all, I got hooked on the opiate medication. I broke my ankle, and I had some surgery. They put a few pins in my ankle and gave me Vicodins on the way out. And I knew better. I never should have been taking no marks, but I never messed with opiates, so I wasn't really familiar with that. I was a cokehead back in the 80s, drinker, pot smoker, all that other stuff. And then I got hooked on opiate medication, and it went on for 9 years, y'all. I knew better. I never should have been messing with no narcotics, but I did. I think I justified it that I had broken my ankle. The doctors prescribed it, and I got caught up in what we all know is now referred to as the opioid crisis, the opioid epidemic. And at the end of the road, y'all, I was snorting fucking heroin. I can't even believe it. never in a million years would I ever have thought something like that would happen to a guy like me, who, again, I say on this show a lot, and I said it again today, I did come from, corporate America. I worked for a multi-million-dollar company where I was a director and worked for 25 years. I worked in the news media in both Detroit and Orlando on television, radio, kind of a high-profile guy, man, when you're on that opioid medication until you do spiral out of control, which seems like it always happens eventually to people that do get hooked on it, you're able to maintain. I was, as they say, a functioning addict. But at the end of that long 9-year run, y'all, it literally was out of control. I couldn't even move some days because I would get dope sick if I couldn't get the pills. And like I said, at the end of it, I'd try to get a hold of the dope man or the plug or whatever the hell you want to call it. And they'd say, Glenn, we don't have any of the good, the pills, the whatever, but hey, we got some heroin. It'll hold you over so you're not dope sick till we get some more of what you really want. And when you're dope sick on that shit, at least what happened with me and a lot of other people I know, that's what happened. And so, long story short, y'all, I've been clean now, thank God, for 2 years and a little over 4 months. My clean date, I'd have to add it up, is March 11th that I've been off the opiates. I haven't put an opiate in this body since March 11th of 2021. And again, thank God, man, I feel better than I have in my life. And so it's a result of some of the things we talk about in those hashtags up top, recovery, enlightenment, music, exercise, all those things have played a big, huge role in me getting better and getting healthy again. So that's kind of the Reader's Digest version of it all, y'all. When I was trying to kick, I do always like to add this, I was trying to do it on my own for a long time. It wasn't like I just woke up one day and said, you know what, I'm going to get off the dope. Tried for a couple of years before it actually happened. And again, that's a long story that I've told on this podcast on previous episodes. And, I try to touch on a little bit each time we do the show. But the point is, while I was trying to kick, I was looking for information online. I was Googling, searching YouTube, and came across a variety of things we've talked about on this show many times, and we'll talk about more. But I never found anything like what we're doing with this podcast. And at that time, that's when I thought to myself, you know what, if I'm ever able to get clean again, I thought I'm going to do a podcast and try to help other people. And so, just like it says in the intro to this program that Dean put together for us, if we can help even one person by the information we talk about on this show, then it's all worth it to me to come out, as I say, about my addiction, to put myself out there the way I do, because it takes a lot of balls to do that at first. It don't bother me anymore. Like I said, we're 20 episodes in now. It is what it is. Like Dean has said to me when we first started this show, Glenn, once you ring that bell, there ain't no taking it back, and I had to think about it long and hard before I decided to actually do this, and now wouldn't have it any other way. We've gotten so much great feedback from people all over the country and even other parts of the world thanking us for what we're doing here and telling us that we are helping them. So, yeah, man, I'm just marching on and continuing on with the podcast. And so, in addition to getting clean, we also like to talk about things that hopefully help people stay clean. And so, if you're a person who comes across this podcast or came across this particular edition and it's your first time with us, please hang with us. At the very least, we'll help you kill some time if you're trying to kick dope, because I get it, man. When you're kicking, that clock ticks at a snail's pace before you finally get all that shit out of your body and you hopefully start to feel normal after, a week or longer. And, we can definitely help kill some time for you and hopefully provide some entertaining content with this program. And like I said, we hope to help people get clean and also, like I said, to stay clean. We do know we have a lot of followers of people that live clean and sober who, participate in the program, chime in and watch, listen regularly, join us in the chat room, things like that. It looks like we've got some people in the chat, by the way. Let me go ahead and check. We got Kelly. Hey, Glenn, Dean, Shivang. Hey, Kelly. We appreciate you watching and listening. Love you to death. Wake Up with Glenn D. Shivang, that's one of your friends from Boston, chimed in. Virgil Kane, who's a new viewer and listener that I'm not aware of, from Manchester, England. Virgil, thank you for participating in the program today. Welcome. And man, we got somebody watching live from England. That really, it just goes to show, like what I said, y'all, it's wonderful what we're doing with this program and that we're reaching people not just around the country but other parts of the world. So that's the intro, y'all. Obviously, I'm never much at a loss for words. I can talk forever about it, but like I said when we started, today's focus is on enlightenment. And I mentioned that. Oh, and there's Dale. That boy Dale from Detroit City just chimed in.
Dale the Dalian. What's up, brother?
Dale the Dalian. I like that. I've never heard that before, Shivang. Yeah, that's a friend from Detroit. I think this is Dale's first time jumping on the show. So welcome to that boy Dale. So, like I said, y'all, in addition to hopefully trying to help people get clean, we also want to try to help people stay clean. And so one of the ways that it certainly helps for me, and a thing I learned in, recovery programs, NA, AA, fucking A, whatever, pardon the expression, it talks about enlightenment, finding spirituality, things to that nature. Finding peace is what I like to say. And I've talked about it a lot on the show before that, sometimes when people find their way to a 12-step meeting for the first time, and they hear the word God, it's like, oh man, you put up the defenses, like, oh geez, here come the holy rollers, and they're going to start praying over me, and I say this with all respect, here come all the Jesus people and all that other stuff trying to save me. 12-step programs are not all about that kind of stuff, y'all. They are not religious programs. They are not. I assure you of that. And if people start coming on too strong about that stuff, I think the 12-step programs do a pretty good job policing themselves and putting that kind of stuff in check. I'll also say they certainly, and certainly the case for me, and Shivang, I'll be curious to hear you, have been a great pathway and an introduction, if you will. Not that I didn't have a religious background. Most people, I think, do from when they were kids or parents sent them to church or whatever the hell. It was a great pathway for me to start thinking about spirituality again in my life and how it might help me. And I see you nodding there, so yeah.
I can definitely relate. I mean, for me, when I first came into recovery and was introduced to the 12-step programs, I never really had much trouble with the whole spiritual God thing because I grew up in a Hindu family. But one thing I can say that I learned throughout my journey of recovery is that to keep an open mind. My views today might not be the same views I have 2 months from now. And I can tell you very diligently that when I first came in, when I went to my first meeting and they were talking about all the higher power, I was like, in my heart, I was like, man, I already have my relationship with my higher power. There's no way it's going to change. And when I look back, yeah, some of it is structured the same, but it's expanded. It's definitely expanded from what it used to be. So
yeah,
open-mindedness factor.
I get it, bro. And even like with myself, I was raised in the Catholic Church. I wouldn't, and I'm not talking negative toward the Catholics or anything. I just wouldn't consider myself to be a practicing Catholic. It's just the church that I came up in, and for me, when I got old enough to make my own decisions about whether or not I wanted to, continue to go on a regular basis, it just didn't work for me. I felt like it was, this punishing God that, maybe I had fucked up so bad in my life that I was a lost cause already, man. Like, what's the point? And so I just walked away from it altogether. I wasn't involved in any religion, any spirituality. In fact, there was a point in my active addiction where I was so far away from all that, I was like using at the Lord. I was using at people, using at situations, at society that I was so fucked up about it, and using at the Lord that I didn't fucking understand anything about. And still sometimes jokingly, but half serious, say, I still don't understand, whatever. But today, where I'm at in my life is I say I choose to believe. And the 12-step programs help to get me there because I used to, and you've heard me say this many times, Shivang, I've said it on this show before, that, I sometimes would feel like a phony because of that whole fake it till you make it thing where I'd say, oh, I believe and God is good or whatever the hell, when I really didn't know if I believed that shit one way or another anyway. Like a lot of skeptics will say, it's a lot of fairy tale shit and all that other stuff. Prove it. If I can't see it, feel it, touch it, how the hell do I know if there's really a God that exists? And then I had an old timer around the program say to me, well, Glenn, how do you know you haven't seen God? If God is, working through other people, you may have seen or heard his message and not even known it, So anyway, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole because we can go on and on about it forever. But the point is, I wanted to kind of start to address that topic of spirituality and enlightenment because that's what today's program's focus is mainly going to be about. And if for anyone who may not be, so familiar with it, why is enlightenment and spirituality so important? For most people in recovery. And that's because, in my opinion, man, you got to find some peace. Because once you take the drugs away, it's like, okay, I was saying this. Remember, we went to a meeting the other night together, Shivang, and I said, I don't have a drug problem today. I don't. I don't have a drug problem anymore. I don't use drugs. I haven't used drugs in almost 2.5 years. Matter of fact, I am completely drug-free other than a little caffeine in a soda or coffee. I don't even fucking take cholesterol meds, I could probably use some high blood pressure meds because I know some of y'all know I'm a pretty high-strung guy. But the point I'm making is I don't take any mind or mood altering chemicals. So, but what do I do to maintain that being clean and sober? And that is I got to maintain my peace. Because if I don't maintain my peace, I can very easily get a case of what we call around the program that I learned, a case of the fuck it's. Fuck this, fuck that, fuck you, fuck that, fuck everybody. And matter of fact, fuck it, I'm going to go get high. Let me go to the bar and have a drink. I'm just going to go have a beer to take the edge off. Well, I've learned the hard way from my track record and my history. I go have a beer. Next thing you know, I'll be doing a shot too. And now I've had a beer and a shot of J-Mo, and then I'm like, fuck it, man. I went this far. I might as well go get some of the stuff I really like. Next thing you know, I'm taking pills, smoking weed, and snowballed out of control. And within a month, it doesn't usually happen overnight. And, my experience after a couple of relapses, I wasn't full-blown balls to the wall the next day. But eventually, within a month, I was back to getting loaded every fucking day, and having to live like that, drag my ass out of bed all hungover, strung out, drag my ass to work or whatever the fuck. God, thank God I don't have to live like that anymore. So anyway, without getting too far off topic, the point I was making is that we learn in recovery, whether it's in 12-step programs, or not. There's other things to recovery. It's just not NA or AA or whatever else, as, we've talked about, Shivang. It's about maintaining your peace. A lot of people who know me well know I go to yoga. I meditate on a regular basis, which the 12 steps introduced me to, thank God. The 12-step programs, the recovery community. So I try to maintain peace and just have some serenity in my life, as we say. Not get too excited about anything, not get too low about anything, just try to maintain an even keel. And certainly, I'm no expert at doing it. It's like most people I know in the program are no expert, or anybody I know in life, whether they're an addict, alcoholic, or anything else. We all have moods we go through and stuff, and we all work to just maintain a certain level of peace. And so, with all that being said, this whole topic of enlightenment is very important to me. I know it is to you, Shivang, and certainly I know it is to a lot of, my friends and associates in the clean and sober life, in the recovery world, if you will. So with all that said, let's talk about Mount Shasta. How the fuck does this all tie into the enlightenment thing is what some people may be wondering if you're still following along with us. So, Mount Shasta, I learned about by chance. It's a destination that a lot of people go to in Northern California that has a long, rich history that goes back thousands of years. It's a dormant volcano that when we were there, Shebang, didn't we see some things that said there's a 1 in 4 chance that it could blow again in anybody's lifetime? Yeah, so
Yeah, it was interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
And we were saying that, while you're there, it might kind of freak you out, but we think with today's technology, they could probably tell through seismic activity ahead of time if it was going to blow, and they'd probably do a warning like, hey, man, we should probably get everybody out of the area because we're hearing rumblings. But nonetheless, I would highly encourage you, if this is a topic of interest to you, because I can't go into it all, to Google Mount Shasta and read what you can about it. So I'm going to try to give you the Reader's Digest version. Then we're going to go into the videos and slides of the trip Shebang and I just took there. Some people feel the great creator resides there. Some people feel there's uh, UFO sightings there. Paranormal activity is what I was going to say. And there have been many, many, many reported UFO sightings there. Some people believe there's this long lost civilization from this lost continent. And please help me out here, Sveng. Is it pronounced Luminaire?
Lumerians.
Yeah, Lumerians. Thank you. That live underneath this thing. I mean, and I'm pretty much a skeptic when it comes to all that kind of stuff. Um, I'll also say people go on pilgrimages, if you will, from all over the world to visit this mountain. For those who may be familiar with Hinduism and Shiva, things to that nature, it's very similar to, how is it pronounced, Mount Kailash?
Yeah, Mount Kailash is a mountain
Kailash.
range in the Himalayas by Tibet, where a lot of Hindus believe is the place of Shiva. That's where he resides.
Yes, yes, and that there's this powerful energy and spirit you apparently feel when you go there, and people go there on pilgrimages regularly. So, nonetheless, Shebang's in town visiting, and we're both into all that kind of stuff, man. We just love talking about vibes and energy and spirituality and all that stuff, and so with my buddy here visiting, I thought, God, who would I rather go to Mount Shasta with? No one. And
Appreciate that.
yeah, bro, we just have kind of that bond and that connection, that friendship that we're into that kind of stuff. So we did. We took a trip up there not knowing what to expect. Had heard quite a few things from different people that, yeah, man, there's something going on there. That's what I read that I could relate to the most. Whether you believe any of that stuff I just described, whether the great creator lives there, the higher being, whether there's some lost civilization living underneath the motherfucker, whether there's UFOs, I don't know. I just can't even, get into all that. What I will tell you is the article I read that I liked the most was the headline was, and I posted this on social media while we were there, bro. There's something about Mount Shasta. I don't know exactly how to explain it, how to describe it. Here's a good way to describe it. I have a friend here in Sacramento, Leslie, and her and I follow her and her boyfriend on social media, and she saw that we went there because we will like each other's stuff all the time and stuff. She's pretty active on there, and she wrote a comment when she saw you and I were there, and said it's magical. And I think that's the best way to describe it. It's just a fucking magical place, whether you believe in all that other stuff I described or not. And we're going to talk about it as we go, y'all. And we'll get into the videos and slides in just a second here. But it's fucking magical. And there is an energy there that I just can't even explain. This gravity. Once we were on the mountain, as you know, Shebang, I felt this pull. I've never felt gravity that intense in my entire life. I've never been anywhere, and I felt it like that. And I've been quite a few places. I've been like all up in the Smoky Mountains and all that shit. I'd never felt anything like that. It was fucking bizarre, man. And so, what do you think,
Yeah,
Shivang?
yeah. I
You
mean,
too?
kind of what Leslie said, I think is a very good way of describing it. It's magical, whether you're a skeptic or a believer. Is it all a scientific phenomenon or is it something more? There's something there. There's some kind of energy. And like Glenn was saying, we stopped at one of the stop points when we were climbing the mountain. And the lady said that she one of like the ladies that kind of overlooks. She was like a park ranger, and she's like, yeah, it's funny how some people feel like they're being pulled, and some people feel like they're being pushed away, and they start feeling all sick. Well, Glenn was being pulled. He was gravitating towards the mountain, and I kept feeling like something was pushing me away. I kept getting thoughts in my mind like, dude, just abandon the trip right now. Just tell Glenn you're not feeling good. Go back home. Something was preventing me from getting the spiritual experience at Mount Shasta. So
And we're going to talk about that because eventually you did, and it was so powerful. Hey, by the way, I don't mean to interrupt, Shivang. We want to say hi to that boy Jeremy. I saw he just chimed in the chat. Jeremy, as some of y'all who are regular followers may recall, joined us for the live edition of the Dare Me podcast we did from San Francisco a couple of weeks ago. And he actually was featured on the Back from the Dead edition we did last week at that Wharf Rats meeting. So, hey, Jeremy, welcome, man. We're glad you're with us. We got a full chat room and quite a few viewers and listeners for this live edition. Glad to have y'all, man. So, with all that said, why don't we go ahead and jump into the slides and the videos so y'all can see and hear a little bit more about why Shivang and I feel so deeply what we do about Mount Shasta and how it really is a place that, like I said, there's something about Mount Shasta. You know what, though? And I'm glad you brought up the first slide, Dean. Before we go into it, I'm glad I remembered this because I wanted to share this, and it just slipped my mind. It'll only take me a minute to say. When I was thinking about this edition of the program, of the podcast, I was on the fence about taking as much of a deep dive into Mount Shasta as we're going to. And Shivang, I'll be curious to hear your thoughts and feelings on this, having been there. It was so special to me and such an intense experience that I thought, man, I don't want to ruin this for anyone else. Anyone that goes there, I want them to have their own experience. I don't want it to be influenced by what you and I experience. And then I thought about it and I said, you and I, as you know, watch some documentaries. There's a shit ton of them out there, by the way, folks. If you want to learn about Mount Shasta, go on YouTube. There's a lot of stuff on there. Like I said, Google, read about it. And I thought, well, you know what? There's already all kinds of stuff out there about it that will give people a much better understanding of our trip and what goes on there and what's going on there. And so I didn't feel like we were really, breaking ground with showing what we're gonna on this program. Lots of people already have. And maybe by sharing our experience, will actually influence some people to go there, which I think would be a fantastic experience for anybody, especially in the recovery community, trying to work on enlightenment, spirituality. Maybe someone who's a spiritual seeker like myself. And I don't mean to speak for you, Shivang, but I think for you as well. Definitely. I'm not saying anybody who goes there is going to find all the answers. I didn't find all the answers I was looking for. I mentioned that girl Leslie, and I or replied to one of her comments. As cliche as this probably sounds, I feel like I've changed. Something about that experience changed me. And boo, holy shit, man, something just came over me. I'm almost trying not to get emotional talking about it. It was such a fucking powerful experience. And so, with all that said, I also want to say that I felt like, you know what? Just kind of like with this podcast, I was on the fence about going into such a deep dive about Mount Shasta. And then I thought, you know what? I have no right to keep to myself what we experienced there, because I'm so blessed to have been able to do that and go there, that, you know what, I got this platform, let me go ahead and share it and talk about my experience and show our experience there, so that maybe it might influence some other people to go there so they can have their own experience there. So I wanted to put that out there. And I also want to send a shout out to Carol and John, who just chimed in the chat. Man, we got a real active chat room today, and lots of people watching and listening. It's a Mount Shasta thing, man, the vibes and energy. We're getting a lot of participants today. So anyway, y'all, let's talk about this first slide. So there obviously is, me and Shivang. And this was the first pic we took when we had gotten to the Mount Shasta area. We hadn't actually got to the mountain yet, but we just had to pull over at this spot and say, God damn, look at that thing, man. And just so you know, that mountain is it's over 14,000 feet high. And so, it is definitely something to see. And so here's, a little pic I thought I'd put up there. I screenshotted this off of the GPS, and you can see it says there on the left, Mount Shasta. Well, even in the big pic, 14,163 feet. Don't know how the hell they are able to narrow it down to 163, but it's over 14,000 feet above sea level. And the arrow there, that's the altitude Shivang and I got to, this Mount Shasta wilderness area. People do try to make it to the summit, and it says about 50% of those who try turn back. People have disappeared. That's another thing we didn't even go into. Lots of people have disappeared on this mountain. I mean, and I'm talking a shit ton of people who set out to climb this mountain, make it to the summit, never to be seen or heard from again. Some people believe their spirits live there. It's so many bizarre
I felt
stories.
like a warrior when we left, because I was
yeah.
man, after hearing about all the disappearances, I was like, we actually made it through. We lived to tell the tale.
Yeah, we did. And so anyway, that's where we were there. So Dean, if you don't mind, let's go ahead and show our first video. These are all just short video clips, y'all. I don't think any more of them are more than a minute and a half long or so. But it'll give you a little bit of a better feel for where we were at and the vibes and energy we were taking in at Mount Shasta. You got that first one ready, Dean?
All right, y'all, we out here. And there is the beautiful and legendary Mount Shasta. Amazing. And so, yeah, we're here along this scenic drive that we just kind of got lost along while we were driving. Decided to check it out, and look at that, man. Little valley, range area, and we're across from Mount Shasta. And I just thought this make for a cool video. It's beautiful. Peace.
Okay, so lots better videos than that, but I thought that was a good, coming up, but I thought that was a good one to kind of start it off with, y'all. Just to give, because that's, literally the first video we shot there, giving you a perspective from, way back. And so I like this pic of us. This is a cool pic, we just did this spur of the moment. It wasn't like we planned it or anything or staged it really out, until like just spur of the moment. And, thought it was kind of cool, so there's Mount Shasta off in the background, and that's kind of cool pic of us just hanging together there and stuff. Yeah, who are those two handsome guys? You're exactly right. And so anyway, we got there kind of late in the afternoon the first day, and so we definitely did some sightseeing and stuff like that, but we fully intended to hike the mountain the next day. And so we ended up, just there. I love these pictures of you, Shivang, just kind of taking in all the energy there, man, And I don't even know if you knew I was snapping those pictures.
I don't think I do remember. I don't think I remember.
But anyway, that was very cool. So then, and there's another one of you, great pic of my buddy Shivang. And then we were on a mission to find a place to crash for the night. So we start looking on Airbnbs, and I mentioned that over the years, man, tons of people swear that they've seen UFO sightings over the top of Mount Shasta and in and around the area. So there is this kind of mystique, if you will, about the area. And lo and behold, we ended up at an Airbnb where the suite we got is, they call it the alien suite. And so these folks obviously had a really cool sense of humor about, the Airbnb. By the way, John and Carol just chimed in the chat, Shivang. I don't know if you can see it. Great pictures of you there at Mount Shasta.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. And Carol.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought this was kind of a funny picture, and obviously we did pose for this picture. So anyway, let's see here. Let's go on and show some more pictures. There's the Airbnb from the outside, and there's Shivang vibing the next morning. And I call that the thinker pick. Shivang looks in deep contemplation.
Lost in space, baby.
Yeah, well, this was as we were preparing to go hiking on Mount Shasta, and so we actually took a video. Well, I know this is almost even like home movies a little bit, y'all. Bear with us, but I just thought it'd be fun to show y'all, because I would highly encourage you, if you go to Mount Shasta, get you some Airbnbs. I'm one of them guys, I like giving my money to the local people that live there rather than the hotel chain or whatever, and these people just had the coolest spot. And so we did. We took a video of it, and, they had like a pull-out couch that Shivang slept on, and he let me have the bed. And then the next night, I ended up on the pull-out couch, and he went upstairs in the bed at the second Airbnb. But anyway, Dean, if you want to show that next video, we'll give people a little... Hey, y'all, peace. There's that boy Shivang. Oh, look, he's filming me, recording me. It's cool when you have a travel companion who likes to sleep in like you do and get your day started at noon. But hey, we got 9 hours of daylight. That's a long-ass day up here. So anyway, we just thought I'd do a quick video. This was our Airbnb, man, for the first night up here in the Mount Shasta area. This is a city called Wairika. Mount Shasta is actually a little over a half hour down the road, and we're getting ready to head over there.
Clean up.
Oh, is that the housekeeper? Yeah, anyway, here, I'm going to just... Oh, cool. Show around our little Airbnb. We had a cool spot, man. This is a nice little Airbnb. Always makes me feel good to give my money to the local person rather than the big chains, And we definitely hit the jackpot on this one. It was kind of cool. They call it the Alien Suite because this area is known for UFO sightings and whatnot over the years. There's all kinds of myths and urban legends about Mount Shasta. No matter which ones you may or may not believe, we read something that said, whether you believe any of that stuff or not, there is definitely something about Mount Shasta. And there's an energy in there. When you say hi to the people.
Hope everybody's having a blessed day, man.
Yes,
I'm just
say that.
taking in the vibes. There's a different kind of energy out here, man. Check it out.
Well, I was saying in the video, I love having a travel companion that likes starting
sleeping
in
in later
noon,
than you.
like me. Yeah, that's true. He slept in a little later than me.
Him, bro.
All right, off we go. Peace. All right, y'all. Well, hey, I hope you got a kick out of that video. And by the way, I meant to mention that Airbnb was $100. They always tack on some kind of fucking cleaning fee. That's like the new thing with Airbnb. And there was a $25 cleaning fee, which, hey, nothing against people. They were great, and very easy to work with.
And by the way, that was probably one of the nicest showers I've ever taken. I remember I took a shower and I literally looked at Glenn after I got out, got dressed, and I was like, dude, I feel like a new man after that shower.
It was pretty.
So shout out to the host of that Airbnb.
Yeah, it was a guy named Andrew and his wife. And yeah, they had definitely made a custom area for the shower there. So yeah, man, for that with taxes and fees, I think that one came to like $130. And look at that, man. It's fucking awesome. We had the whole spot. It was cool. Not that we spent a lot of time there, but it was definitely comfortable. And then Shivang had me watching some fucking show all about UFOs before we went to sleep, man. So we were totally like in the whole Shasta vibe and zone. But anyway, so yeah, moving on. This was the next day, you know, when we got on the road from the Airbnb where we were on our way to hike Mount Shasta. And you can see on the left there, that's a photo where we, you know, just pulled off to get a photo kind of off in the distance. And then, man, I just love that photo on the right because that is, you know, when we were close up, you know, to Mount Shasta. And it really, I think, gives a good idea of just how powerful that mountain is. Keep in mind, y'all, that mountain is over 14,000 feet above sea level. I'm telling you, there is an energy and gravity there. There's this gravitational pull that I have never, ever felt anywhere I've ever been in my entire life. It fucking blew my mind. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm not kidding y'all. It was that powerful. So anyway, moving along, then we got to the spot that Shivang was talking about where we actually met this girl who was like a park ranger there. And they had this area you could walk up these stairs and get closer and closer to the mountain. So, of course, we had to get a picture of that. And, you know, I kind of like, that picture of the two of us there. And then as we got deeper into the mountain, you can see we decided to do a little meditation. So Shivang got a picture of your old pal Glenn Victor deep in meditation. And you know what? Shivang ended up, after he took this pic, kind of wandering off, and we both spent, what would you say, probably about 20 minutes to a half hour
20,
meditating?
30 minutes, and we kind of just split a little bit.
Yeah, and then when we, you know, reunited or reconnected or whatever you want to call it, we kept walking, and we shared with each other our meditation experiences. Holy cow, man. We both took a couple of trips, you know, and I was telling Shivang, I said, "Oh my God, man, you're listening to my story about my meditation." I said, "You might think this motherfucker stayed out there using dope too long, or else he's crazy, or maybe a little bit of both, you know." But you know, I was telling, if you remember, Shivang, I shared with you that I've done a lot of different types of meditation, and one of them is I've walked the labyrinth many times in my life. That's something I was introduced to when I got after my first relapse, when I got clean that time after getting out of Brighton. I used to go to this hospital in Seminole County in Central Florida for IOP, and they laid out a labyrinth in the gymnasium I used to walk regularly. And there's actually one at a meeting in the area where you live, that meditation meeting in Livonia area.
GD.
Yeah, yeah, and I was telling Shivang, I'm surprised more people don't walk that thing because if you don't know the history of walking a labyrinth and that type of meditation, it goes back thousands of years, thousands, and it conjures up all these different emotions and feelings. And where I'm going with that whole thing is we shared each other's experience and what, you know, had passed through our mind while we were meditating. And it reminded me, if you remember, Shivang, I told you that when I used to walk the labyrinth at South Seminole Hospital there in Longwood, they had a journal that they put out, and they would ask people to journal about their meditation, and anonymously. You didn't have to put your name or anything if you don't want to. And it was fascinating to read those meditations and the things people wrote that came into their mind as they were walking the labyrinth. Again, God, we could do a whole episode of the podcast just on the labyrinth and the experience. It is a very powerful form of meditation. So anyway, though, I appreciate you taking those pictures there,
No problem.
Shivang. So, Dean, let's go into the next video. By the way, y'all, just so you know, I couldn't keep track of all these goddamn pictures and videos today, so I had to write some notes down, and I'm hoping we do them all in the right order. But according to my notes, Dean, I guess the next video was supposed to come now after this pic. So, if you want to go ahead and shoot that one, let's play it and give it a look and a listen.
Check it out, Mount Shasta. Oh my God, this is freaking amazing. just had to get a video. Look at this. Look at this view. Oh my God.
It's beautiful, bro.
And to think just 2 years and 4 short months ago, I was isolating in my bedroom in Wekiva in northwest Orange County in Orlando for fucking 3 days at a time, not wanting to leave, feeling like I wanted to fucking commit suicide because I was so dope sick. And now, less than 2.5 years later, here I am enjoying this beautiful mountain and just this whole vibe and area. Life's crazy. Life is crazy. Never, ever, 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 ever give up. Just don't give up, because it can change real quick.
Yeah, things can change real quick, y'all. And I was listening to myself talk there, and it's like, man, I'm sure if y'all regular viewer or listener of this podcast, man, none of this shit's scripted. I don't know what's good. I was telling Shivang before we went on today, like, bro, I never know really what the fuck's gonna come out of my mouth. I have a general idea and outline and guideline of what we're gonna do and talk about on the show, and the reason I say that is the same thing, narrating in videos. I didn't know I was going to go down that road of, when I was contemplating fucking checking out and committing suicide when I was dope sick. But, we did a whole episode of this podcast just on the topic of, suicide and addiction and things to that nature. And what I said is true, man. That shit had me so fucked up and being dope sick and the addiction that I just felt like I didn't want to live anymore. And then to have an experience like we did on this trip, man, just makes me even that much more grateful that I was somehow able to miraculously come through that. And by the way, I want to say hi again. Thank you. Glendy was commenting on our pictures and videos. Very nice. Dale said, wow, yeah, I'm glad y'all are enjoying the content. So anyway, moving along, you can see this was a very powerful spot, y'all. And I'm going to go on to the next photo because that kind of wrapped up, that day. I mean, obviously, there was a lot more going on there. And we're going to look at a couple of other videos here shortly where Shivang and I came across these areas that have a stream. And these streams are all water that melt from the snow you see on Mount Shasta into these streams. You can't really get, I don't think, any purer water than that. Talk about cleansing and talk about things happening just the way they're supposed to, because Shivang, if you remember, we were hiking up that mountain and we were quite a ways up there. We had been hiking for probably about 45 minutes and I didn't think we were going to bump into anybody at that point. Yeah. And along comes this lady all by herself. Kathy was her name. And, she was definitely a free spirit type of person. And we just start talking to her. And she told us about these streams that, if you remember, they're off the beaten path. Like, if someone doesn't tell you to go look for them or you don't happen to wander off and find them, you wouldn't fucking know they were there. We never would have even thought twice to try to find them. And she said, oh, you got to go check this out. And I'm so glad that we bumped into her. Wouldn't you agree, man?
Yeah, it was amazing, man, because we were, going up the mountain. We ran into this lady, and we kind of took a little side route into the woods, and we saw this natural water stream. But the part, I don't think I told you about this, Glenn, but later that night, I'm doing more research on Mount Shasta, and supposedly where a lot of people and have their quote-unquote supernatural see Lemurians or ETs was right off of Panther's Meadow, where we saw that stream. They kind of get sidetracked, and that's where a lot of people see these otherworldly beings or whatever you want to call it. And it kind of was just like interesting, I was like,
yeah, it's fast. That's just one of I'm telling y'all, there's so many fascinating stories about it. And in fact, Dean, I got the comments pulled up. Here's a little sidebar story, but I'm glad you pulled this up. Tell us. Yeah, I don't want to read or speak for you, Dean. What did you just post? Something about Shasta beverages?
Well, I was wondering if Mount Shasta, Shasta Soda
Shasta
Company
Soda,
or whatever, Were they connected? And as far as Wikipedia is concerned, yes, they are. And there's a whole mess of history there. But back to
Yeah, Shasta.
1889, I mean,
Yeah, Shasta Mineral Springs Company in
Mm.
1889. And then, you know what's interesting? I got to tell this little sidebar story. There's a coffee house I like in Midtown Sacramento. It's called Naked Coffee. That's the name of it. Naked
mm,
Coffee, right in Midtown. And they have a thing on the menu called the Keith Richards. Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones, and it's a can of Shasta Cola and 2 shots of espresso. So you
oh
drink one of
God.
them,
Jumping like
yeah,
Keith,
yeah.
huh?
And I thought, oh man, I got to try that. And it's actually pretty fucking good. It's not bad at all, you know? And so it just made me think of that, Dean, with what you just posted. And I appreciate you posting that, because there are just so many fascinating stories like what both of you just told. So, anyhow, with all that said, these two springs that we came across, well, I think they're all part of the same spring. We just had a couple different spots we went to. It was so powerful for me. And again, boy, oh boy, I got to be honest. I'm trying not to get emotional, y'all, because it truly was a spiritual experience for me because we both went up to the stream and we cupped the water and put it over our face and sprinkled it over us. And you'll see in one spot I'm actually standing in the thing. I was telling Shivang, I feel like I just baptized myself, and it was just so cleansing. It felt
Powerful.
cleansing to me, like it was just washing away any negative energy or whatever you want to call it. So, without getting too much deeper into it, let's go ahead and play these next two videos, Dean. We'll take a pause in between the two and maybe talk about it briefly, but let's go ahead and play the first one.
Okay, that would be probably the deer one.
Yeah.
So here we are on Mount Shasta, and look at that, there's a wild deer literally living on Mount Shasta. And look at this, I'm gonna go over and check this out. I don't know if somebody actually stacked them that way. I'm sure somebody probably did. But I'm gonna go over there and feel the vibes of those rocks. Look at that deer. It's minding his business. How cool.
Okay, so hey, y'all, like I said, I got a bunch of notes, and so that obviously wasn't a video of any streams. I meant to show that one. I
That's
said,
the
y'all, I
next
gave you
video
my
then, you want
disclaimer that I was hoping to keep track of them all, but I kind of forgot about that one. That one was like kind of bizarre. It was like right after the meditation thing, I just happened to see a wild deer up in freaking Mount Shasta where we were hiking, and so it was just kind of cool. I just thought, oh, let me get a quick clip of that. So let's go ahead now, and these next two videos should be the ones I was talking about at the springs that are.
This rock, I was like standing here meditating like this. That water's so fucking cold, you can't hardly stand it that long. But here, it's just like, the water's washing away.
There you go. So that's the one that I really wanted y'all to see. And I know, you could barely hear what I was saying in the background because the phone was so far away. And of course, the sound of the stream was quite loud. But I got to tell y'all, that was very powerful. And one of the things I was saying there is that water is freezing cold. It was a very warm day, so it kind of felt good actually. But that water was cold as hell, wasn't it, Shivang?
Oh yeah. One more thing I want to kind of talk about the water, man. I don't know if you remember, but the second day when we were at the Airbnb, there was a note that the host kind of posted on the sink, and they're like, companies, and I don't know how true it is, but they wrote on the note, don't paraphrase me, what they wrote, companies have been trying to bottle this water for years, but for some kind of regulation issue, they're not able to. And they're like, some of the purest water on the planet, enjoy.
And you know what? I was thinking about that as I was reading the factoids Dean has there because he's found some stuff that says in 1928, the Shasta Water Company was getting water out of there or something. I don't know. What's that second one say there, Dean?
Oh, it just says the water was poured into glass-lined railroad cars and shipped off for local bottling.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe they're not still doing it, or because that I don't know. But
Well, I
yeah,
can't
you're right,
imagine there
Shivang.
was a whole lot of FDA approvals kind of nowadays that applied back then.
Well, and not to sound cliche, but that water out of the tap that Shivang was, there was a little sign that said, "Hey, man, this is like straight from a well that is, what's the word I'm looking for? This well has water that comes right from the snow that melts down from Mount Shasta." And so I've drank well water many times in my life, and I was thinking, oh, God, this is going to taste like fucking baking soda or rust. You know how that well water always tastes nasty? It was not. It was good.
No, well water in Florida,
Yeah.
is
Florida
a whole
water.
different thing. Well water in
This was
Florida is
different.
just
And
full
I
of
have
methane and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah. I have a feeling, there's probably some kind of filter or some shit, but we did drink some of that water right out of the tap that they say literally comes from a well that's fueled, I guess is the word I might have been looking for,
I
from
grew up
Mount
in
Shasta.
New Hampshire. There's places where people would drive off the road and water would be bubbling up from the ground. I mean, and people would stop there and just get their jugs out and pull water from the ground, just flowing. I mean,
Yeah. Well, Dean, let's go ahead and play that next video because this one is actually at one of the streams that is made up of all this snow you see in this picture here that melts from Mount Shasta and then flows down into this stream that we're standing by in this next video.
What's up, y'all? Peace. We out here. We are out here. We are we probably about 10,000 feet above sea level. Like, you can't get no more in the middle of, the forest of Mount Shasta. There's that boy Shivang over there taking in a spiritual moment. We're here at this natural spring in what's called the Panther area of Mount Shasta, man. And got in that water barefoot, taking in the energy out here. Man, got filled up a couple times out here. Surprise, surprise. Glenn always getting emotional, but man, had to record just a moment of this at least. Peace, feeling blessed.
Yeah, feeling blessed. Everybody always teases me now, even at my home group. Oh, Glenn always gonna get filled up.
Man.
That's just, I heard somebody say that once. I always used to say get emotional, but yeah, I know I say it a lot because I do. I get filled up, I say it on this podcast a lot, but I will say it again anyway. I don't give a fuck. It's like that saying goes. Once you get clean, there's good news and not so good news, clean and sober, whatever the hell you want to call it. The good news is all your feelings and emotions come back. The not so good news is all your feelings and emotions come back. And that certainly has been the case with me. You know, I get emotional about stuff like that because it's very powerful for me, you know. Just like we talked about at the beginning of this program, you know, this Mount Shasta thing, yeah, we're having fun and, you know, we're going walking through our trip there and everything, but man, it was all about spirituality for me and enlightenment and all that stuff and, you know, feeling closer to the great creator, if you will, you know, or maybe being enlightened about some of the, you know, unanswered questions we all have in life. And, you know, what do we got here, Dean? Are not hills at all, but
Oh,
rather
that
piles of old volcanic
I
rock.
think
That's
I think
true.
that's just part 2 of the YouTube
Oh, okay. But yeah,
post.
that's true. Well, I'm glad actually that you posted that because yeah, man. And you know what else? Remember Shebang when I started walking on some of that soil because see, you know, we're doing our little hike in kind of the wooded areas, but when you go walk on the soil of that mountain, it's very soft. You almost like sink in because it's volcanic ash that has accumulated over thousands of years. It's fucking bizarre, man. It's just really bizarre. But in any case, y'all, that kind of wrapped up our day of hiking Mount Shasta. And I said earlier I was on the fence about sharing our experience because I didn't want to, like, you know, ruin it for anybody else to go have their own experience. But I assure you, there was a lot more to our experience than just this brief, you know, information we've provided about the trip in the last half hour or so. So, by all means, if this is interesting to you, go check it out. Have your own experience. I'm telling you, it'll fucking blow your mind. I mean, I can't say it enough, man. There is, like that saying said, there's something about Mount Shasta. I don't know how to describe it, to tell you what it is, other than to say, for me, I absolutely felt this gravitational pull, almost like this magnetic pull I've never felt anywhere before in my life. There is an energy there I just can't explain. You agree, Shivang?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I definitely, like I said, you know, and I don't know if you're going to show the videos of the nighttime, but I felt something different, you know, and I'll
Yeah.
explain that a little bit.
Well, I don't have any videos of
Okay.
nighttime, but I have pictures, and I'm so glad you brought. Shivang doesn't even know everything. He knows some of the
Yeah, I'm
stuff
going
I
with the flow, man.
had loaded. Yeah, yeah. And that's the way to do it, you know. We don't want this podcast to ever come across stilted or scripted or anything. We just go with the flow of it. I mean, I have a general idea where we're going with it. But anyway, we do have some photos because after that long day of hiking and everything else, we went and got our next Airbnb. Dean, I'm not seeing the photos up to flick through. Here we go. Thank you. So we got our next Airbnb, and we were at home or at the Airbnb, and we didn't plan it. We didn't even talk about it. It was just like spur of the moment. Like, you know what? Oh, I remember what it was, Shebang. I went out to my car to get something.
Yeah.
I left something in the car, like my overnight bag or whatever the fuck. And I walked out and I looked up in the sky and I was like, oh my God, we got to go back to the mountain. And I go, Shebang, come on out and look at this. And I looked up at the stars. And you got to remember the elevation there, y'all. I'd never felt so close to the stars and like the universe in my life. And Shebang took one look, and I didn't think you were gonna go because we were like already settled
Right, it was
in
like
for the
midnight,
night. We had
right.
dinner. We're like ready to chill, and you took one look, and you're like, "Oh fuck yeah, bro, we gotta go." And like within like 10 minutes, we were in the car and drove all the way back up to the spot where we were, which was not just a hop, skip, and a jump away. That was over a half-hour drive, you know. I mean, we weren't that far. But anyway, so these pictures, we went back to the starting point of where we started to hike. I forget the name of this area. There's
Panther
a name.
Meadows?
Yeah, yeah, whatever it was. Yeah. And so we walked up, this stairway a little ways, and there was actually a bench there that you could sit. And, there were other cars around, but we didn't really come across any other people. There were definitely people out there. We just didn't come in contact with them. So we got this fucking bench. And it was long enough where we could literally, Shivang was laying on his back one way, I was the other way, where we could lay on our back and stare straight up at the sky, into the universe and all these stars and shit. It was fucking bizarre. But anyway, the picture on the left, if you look closely, that is Mount Shasta off in the distance there. So, you see the dirt and the trees and all, but that white there in the middle of the picture, that's Mount Shasta. And then the middle picture, I just kind of zoomed in on it. So we're still there, man. I mean, we're like right there with all the magnetism and gravity and energy and the pull of the mountain. It was there. Now, the picture all the way on the right, that is literally a picture of the sky that I took on my phone. And it freaked the hell out of both of us, if you remember, Shivang, because number one, I have no idea what that light is at the bottom there. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe my camera picked up some of the flash, because the flash did automatically go off just because it was so dark out. And I mean, when you get out there, bro, it's fucking pitch black. You're out there and, But what I love about this picture, I told Shivang I may get this picture printed off, like a 10 by 15 or something glossy, and put it in a nice frame on the wall. Because if you look closely from the bottom left going up toward the top right, it's almost like you see this band of part of our Milky Way galaxy. That's how it looked to me out there. It was just, I have never seen stars and such an intensity and clarity in my life. Again, y'all, remember in the elevation there. So we're like up in the freaking sky looking at this shit. So anyway, Shivang, I really want to hear from you, because I know you had a powerful experience. But let me just show this next picture real quick. And I might even go back to them. This one is just so fucking bizarre. This one actually kind of freaks me out. And this is a close-up of the night sky. And, some people might think we're maybe looking too hard to see something here. And maybe you don't see it right now, but if you go back and watch this podcast maybe at another time and do a freeze frame on this, I see the face of a fucking bear in the middle of this. I see, you can see that white dot up near the top, but then if you go right down the side of it in the middle, there's another faded white dot, and I see an eye of a bear there. And then on the other side of it, I see the eye of the bear winking at me. And then in the middle, I kind of see his snout and his mouth. And I read it all by Shivang, and he's like, fuck, I see it too, bro. I see it.
I'm seeing what I saw the same day when you showed it to me. I keep seeing Scar from Lion King, man.
Yeah,
there's some kind of lion,
there's
wolfish looking creature
going
in that
on.
middle. And like you said, we might be overlooking it. There's confirmation bias. If we're looking for that, we're more likely to see it. But I don't know. It
was intense, y'all. And so I know some of y'all are thinking, oh, God, these fucking guys are nuts. But, you got to understand the vibe and the energy. Oh, my God, Glendy said, I see it. She sees it.
Well, hey, that's one
so
more
at least
thing.
we know we're not fucking crazy after all. It's there. It's there, man. And when you're out there, I mean, it was literally like right around midnight by this time.
Yeah.
And the sky was so dark, and the stars, and Shivang even has this app, that bright dot up in the upper part of this picture is actually Jupiter. He was able to put his phone on, and this app tells you what the constellations are and different planets. So that's fucking Jupiter, believe it or not. But anyway, I want to go, so it was very intense, y'all. So let's go back to these pictures for a moment, because Shivang, I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah.
I just want to reiterate or recap something that you talked about a little bit earlier in the program, and then maybe you could tell your story for us. That I was feeling, I remember walking up that mountain when we were hiking it, feeling pulled in that direction. And y'all, I just can't even begin to tell you how intensely that felt to me. That magnetism, that gravitational pull. I was being pulled toward this thing. And you said, Shivang, you were feeling some resistance. However, you had an experience here with when we were out there at night, and that's why I wanted to go back to these pictures that change things for you. Is that a good way to describe it? Tell us what happened for you.
I would love to, man. So one thing that really came to mind as we're going through this podcast is that when we were out there, I learned that I don't need to take psychedelics to have a lucid experience on this planet. That's one thing for sure, because I was in a very lucid state, and like Glenn was saying, it was a good experience, very spiritual, but it was very emotional, man. It was a very emotional experience. I was feeling a lot of highs and lows, and so pretty much I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So when we're going to Panther's Meadow, we meet the ranger, and that's when she starts telling us, she's like, yeah, well, some people feel like they're being magnetized, like they're being drawn. And Glenn was like, it's like he wasn't even walking, like he was being pulled to the mountain. But then she was telling me about, she's like, yeah, I have an ex-boyfriend that anytime he gets closer to the mountain, he feels nauseous, like something is pushing him away. So right when we started taking the hike, I was in a dark state of mind, and I was feeling sick, and I was like, man, I don't want to do this. I'm thirsty. I'm feeling sick. I don't want to go up. Like, something inside of me was like, dude, don't go there. And at times I was kind of getting like envious of Glenn's experience, because he was in like in like the hyper like spiritual realm, like, oh my God, like this is what life is about. Like he was being drawn towards it. And and there were times where my mind was like, dude, just abandon the trip, bro. Like there's something that you can't be here right now, like weird thoughts were going through my mind. So fast forward to this night when we finally decided, hey, let's go get a nighttime experience. And we go to that same little peak, and we're just sitting there and we're listening to different music and meditating and stuff like that. And I had a very like emotional experience that I surrendered something that I was holding on to, and it was, and like, when I say I've never been a crier. I'm not saying that in like a manly, like, oh, I don't cry. No, it's not like that. But I just never been the type of person to express my emotions through tears. After that, I was giving Glenn a hug saying, I love you, man.
I was going to say.
Me here. And I was tearing up, man, because I felt like I surrendered something.
Bro, I don't mean to interrupt your flow or your vibe, and I definitely want you to keep going with the story, but I had to interject because I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it caught my attention. I'll tell y'all, Shivang is not like a touchy-feely guy. I know that. I've never told you that before, but I get that vibe, bro. Me, I like hugging people all the time. Hey, what's happening? I'm kind of a touchy-feely kind of guy, I guess you'd call me. You're not like that. Even when I do, see you at meetings or whatever, we like to give each other a hug. You kind of do that shoulder thing. And I could tell exactly what you talked about, that you definitely had some kind of an emotional experience or some kind of conversion. Something took place, because you were like, bro, I am so glad we came here, man. I got to give you a hug. And we had this, I love you, man, kind of embrace. And it was just so powerful, bro. So I had to interject that. Yeah.
And I'm glad you did, man. And it definitely was. And, a lot of, when we were watching like a lot of documentaries on the mountain, a lot of people that are seeking healing come to the mountains. And one thing that I remember that stuck out is that if there's something that you're having trouble letting go of or surrendering, the mountain is going to bring that shit out of you. It definitely is. And it fucking brought it out of me. And I don't know, out of anybody that's watching, if we have any cosmologists or people that study the stars. I was telling Glenn after, because I got that one app that tells you about the constellations. I just remember when I was laying there meditating, the Vega star was like calling my fucking name, bro. It was like, out of the million stars that I was seeing, that Vega star was sticking out to me like it was almost reaching towards me. And I tried doing a little Google research on if there's any symbolism. I couldn't really find anything. So if there's people that can enlighten me on that, you know, you got my information on Facebook. I would love to chat about that. But yeah, it was a very emotional experience. And I feel like something that I was holding on to, or something that was holding on to me, some kind of darkness, some kind of energy, some entity, I feel like it was surrendered, you know. And kind of like Glenn said, when I came back, I don't think it just answered all my questions and fairy dust and boom, I'm an enlightened being, but it gave me clarity and a sense of purpose that I did not have, because I was in a dark place when we went to Mount Shasta. You know, I wasn't doing the best emotionally, and I think I came back with a new, like, renewed sense of clarity and purpose on this planet, you know. So,
bro, that is a great way to describe it. And thank you for sharing your very, you know, intimate and personal experience there, bro. You know, I like the way you described it, because that's kind of a good way to describe it for me too. It wasn't like I came back with this life-changing, oh God, now I know all the answers or anything like that. I will say I feel like I passed through some type of transition in my life, whatever that may be. As I mentioned when we first started talking about this whole Mount Shasta thing, that for those seeking enlightenment, spirituality, whether it's on a recovery path or just a path in life, or for anyone who maybe isn't struggling with any type of addictions or whatever, I think we all want to have a certain sense of peace in our life. And Shivang, you happen to know this about me. You know, maybe not all our viewers and listeners, but certainly a lot of my close friends and those that know me from the programs that I attend meetings for. That one of my challenges over the past several months is that I've been working on, in step 6 and 7, as we say, is having such a short fuse. I don't like that about myself. Sometimes I can lose my temper way too quick over stupid, silly shit, you know? It's like we talked about, man, that old saying in that book, you know, don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. I seem to do quite well with the big stuff, you know? And, you know, that whole kind of thing is like, well, you know, shit happens, man. Just keep marching forward, you know? Yet, you know, if something doesn't go my way, you know, at a restaurant, or I don't think I'm being respected or being treated, you know, properly by a wait person, you know, a wait staff at a restaurant, or somebody cuts me off in traffic, or I lose my patience waiting in line. I don't like that about myself, that I lose my patience and my peace so quickly. And I'm working on that. And where I'm going with all that is that was something I meditated about, you know, while we were at the mountain, you know. And there's that old saying, y'all, again, not to get, you know, flowering this up and get too mystical and all that, you know. I've been taught to pray for guidance and meditate and listen for the answer. And so I was putting that kind of vibe and energy out there while we were at the mountain. And I'm not saying I'm never going to lose my fucking temper again. I lost it a couple times since then, you know, but I do feel like I went through some kind of portal almost. That's a word I noticed a lot of people use out there, portal. And I definitely went through some type of transition. And you know what, Shivang? This is one of my hopes. That will result from our trip and experience there that you and I talked about, is it's not like you go there and there's this burning bush. Certainly we had some very intense and powerful moments like we've been describing here. We also both talked a lot about it and agreed that when we were experiencing it right in the middle of it, and even on the long ride home after, because it's about 3.5 hours from where I live, we were saying that we felt as though the long-term effects of visiting Mount Shasta, where the real payoff was going to come, that it takes a while for all that to kind of vibe and process and percolate, or whatever you want to call it, you know. And I'm kind of hoping and thinking maybe, you know, some of the long-term effects will be I'll get more peace and not lose my temper as quick. You know?
And another thing, man, you know, we didn't really clarify with the viewers, but when we went to Mount Shasta. Glenn had a slight idea of what it was. You know, he knew what he was getting himself into. I didn't have any fucking idea what we were doing. He was just like, Shivang, there's a spiritual mountain range and I want to go with you. Let's go. And I was just like, fuck it, let's go. I didn't do any research, no kind of preconceived notions. But I was sharing with one of the people, and we went to a meditation group, and I told them, I was like, as soon as we got in the vicinity of the mountain range, I just started feeling some type of way, and I was like, okay, there's some shit going on here. I don't know what the fuck it is, but I need to learn about this. And that's when I started learning about all the spirituality and the experiences. And one thing that a guy that I met, you know, when we were at one of the falls, I told him about my experience, you know, that I had when we were out stargazing. I was like, dude, the first couple days I was feeling uncomfortable. Like there was a hamster running around. And he told me something that really resonated with me and my belief system. And he's like, think about it. Where do you come from? And I'm like, well, I'm a kid from the city of Detroit in the suburban area, around that area, grew up around that area, lived there most of my life. And he's like, Mount Shasta is a very high vibrational place. Yeah. You were living in a low vibration. God bless Detroit. I love it, man. But there's a lot of shit that goes on, you know. Shout out to Detroit. But he was like, you're living at a low vibrational place. Your body is getting accustomed to the new sense of vibration at Mount Shasta. Now, even if you're like, okay, that's a little too far for my belief system, even the physical, Mount Shasta is 10,000 feet above sea level.
14,000.
They're at 14,000 feet. There's going to be different things that happen in terms of oxygen and how you're feeling and all that. So my body was getting acclimated, that's for sure. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Shivang, I'm glad you brought up because I don't have any slides or videos on this or whatever, and you know I thought it'd be cool to talk about it briefly. Before we moved on to the next day, where we went and explored some other spots, which are still right there in the whole Mount Shasta area, and you're still feeling all the energy and vibes and everything we're talking about here. But before we did move on to some other spots, we went to a meditation that you mentioned that was literally across the street from Mount Shasta. Like during this meditation, I literally was staring out the window at the mountain the whole time. And if you remember, Shivang, after you asked me, bro, did you have your eyes closed during the meditation or were you staring at the mountain? And I said, well, I was trying to just keep staring at the mountain because it was an hour-long meditation, but it was a long day. So there were a couple times where I did close my eyes and kind of catch a little rest of the eyes. I wasn't like sleeping or anything, but in any case, the point I'm making is we went to this meditation, and it was called the Purple Light Meditation. And one of the myths, one of the urban legends, whatever you want to call it, one of the stories of Mount Shasta is there was this guy who was hiking Mount Shasta, who says he came across another man while he was out there who described himself as Saint Germain, and that there was this purple light around him, and that he inspired him to start this movement called I Am. Now, again, not to get into controversy and all that other stuff, y'all, but this I Am movement ended up attracting a shit ton of followers, I guess, from around the country and other parts of the world. And then, like what you hear with a lot of different organizations, whether it's, you know, religious, spiritual, whatever, there was some shit in the game about money that was allegedly embezzled. I don't know. I don't fucking want to know. It doesn't matter to me because that's not what I'm here to talk about today. You know, with all respect to anybody who may have got, you know, screwed on some money or whatever. But it is part of what you hear about when you're there was this guy that supposedly started this movement because he said he met some guy who inspired him to start the I Am movement. And supposedly this guy was some guy who described himself as this Saint Germain with this purple hue around him. So the reason I go into that whole story is because the meditation we went to, which was at this what they call it, the community center, corner community or whatever,
spiritual community center.
yeah,
I don't
and
remember.
it was called the Purple Light Meditation. Now I've been to lots of meditations, as I've talked about on this podcast, man. I've done the Labyrinth, I've done gazing, I've done yoga nidra, I've done all kinds of, because I experiment with it. And I've never been to no meditation like this, bro. This was a fucking trip.
It was a trip.
The lady who led it, God bless her, she was a real nice lady, but she described herself as a priestess. And she also told her story of how she was attracted to Mount Shasta. She had been married 25 years. I think she said her husband passed. Her kids were all grown and off on their own and everything. And she didn't go into the whole story, but she basically said she felt like the mountain called her to it. And that when she went to visit, and you hear this story often there, never went back. It reminded me of my younger days. You've heard these stories, Dean, where people go on spring break to Daytona Beach and they never go back home. They just love the party life so much. Well, there's stories like that at Mount Shasta. People go visit Shasta and say, man, this is where I'm supposed to be, and they never fucking go back home. And that was the case with that lady. And she did some pretty bizarre things there. I say bizarre because I never experienced it before. Where, what was it, Shivang? She did the third eye opening with some ointment or oil? Or...
So, like, the purpose, I think, of her meditation, because you said the violet color. The violet color resembles your third eye and your crown, right? For people that believe. And at the end of the meditation, she went around asking all of us, okay, do you want the third eye activation? And I was like, hell yeah, I came this far, So she came, tapped on our foreheads and then the back of our necks, and then after she tapped on your neck, it's like she almost got possessed for a minute.
Yeah, she would shake.
She would
like
start shaking, like having a seizure, and start speaking in tongues.
Yeah, and, that weird shit. That shit freaks me the fuck
out.
We watched that. I don't mean to interrupt you, but fucking Shivang had me watching that Hills Have Eyes movie last night. I haven't seen that movie in like 15 years. It freaked me the fuck out, and I didn't tell you this while we were watching it, but I was thinking, oh my God, this is like that fucking crazy lady that did the meditation. I mean, she was a nice lady. I don't mean that in any disrespectful way to people that are into all that shit, but I will say all that speaking in tongue shit, that shit freaks me the fuck out. And then I also wonder, just because of my intellectual mind, like, oh, this fucking lady's laying it on thick, man. She's putting on a show for us and all. And there was no fee, by the way, so it wasn't like she was doing it to try to charge us any money or whatever. You could leave a donation if you want. We threw $10 in there or whatever, So it wasn't like she was trying to sell you, up the river or what's that saying? Sell you a bag of goods or whatever the hell.
Oil.
A bill of goods, snake oil, yeah. It wasn't like that at all. She sincerely believed in that shit, and I was a little leery, even getting the oil. I looked at Shivang, and you were like, "Yeah, bro, get your third eye activated." I was like, "Okay, I'll do it." And sure enough, she did it. And so it was just a bizarre experience. And you know what? I'll say this. If you remember, we talked about this afterwards. It's one of the gifts of my recovery because I have been taught to be open-minded. Going back to this whole topic of when we first started this conversation about Mount Shasta, this whole topic of spirituality and enlightenment, a lot of people who are trying to get clean come into these 12-step meetings, whether it's NAAA, fucking A, like I say, and as soon as they hear the word God, man, sorry, I bumped my mic, they get defensive. And they start saying things like what I did when I was a younger man. Oh, God, here come the holy rollers. Here come the Jesus people. Oh, they're going to try to save me. And then they're going to want me to go to this revival and get baptized and all this other shit. And it's not like that. It's just not. If that's your thing and you're into it, God bless you. I'm not judging. I'm not making fun. I'm not criticizing or anything like that. My experience has been most people, when they first come in the rooms of 12-step meetings and stuff like that, that's that's not what they're looking for, y'all. They just want to fucking get clean. And in a lot of cases, get their life back. You know, for me, I came to a conclusion, I didn't want that fucking life back. You know, I wanted a new life, you know, and it's worked out that way for me. But I guess where I'm going with it is, again, you know, you're taught in the programs, hey, man, don't worry about all that. You know, just be open-minded and let it happen. That was one of the best pieces of advice I got in the program when I first started trying to get clean was, Glenn, get out of your own way, you know. You can be your own worst enemy sometimes. Just be open-minded to this stuff. And so the point I'm making with all that said, this meditation, y'all, it did kind of freak me out, but I was open-minded to it. I'm like, hey, what's the worst that could happen, you know? I mean, some people might be like, well, fuck, if that bitch was speaking in tongues, you might come possessed or some shit, or rubbing oil, you know. I know some people that believe that way, like, oh, man, you better be careful going in meditation or being around shit like that. You know, I don't frighten easily. Like the name of the podcast, fucking dare me. Hell yeah, I'll sit there and let the lady do her thing. And it was a fascinating experience. I had never done anything like that before. Not that kind of meditation. So it was fun, you know. It was
I definitely
fun.
wanted to share just a little bit about my experience and with the meditation. And before I do, I'm going to give you guys the same disclaimer that Glenn is, because I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, some people are going to think that this motherfucker either did too much acid or he went way too fucking far and he ain't coming back, you know? But
Right.
I don't know if you remember, Glenn, after we were done with the meditation, when we were thanking the practitioner, I shared something with her that I wholeheartedly remember the experience. And so, just like Glenn, I'm someone that's done meditation for hundreds of hours, done different techniques and, you know, different breath work and gone to different monasteries and all that kind of stuff. But I've never once had an experience where I actually encountered an entity or some kind of otherworldly being. And I remember after the meditation, I told the lady, I was like, this is the first time I've done a meditation where I actually encountered something that wasn't from this planet, another being. And it's crazy. I don't know if you guys have ever played the game, the World of Warcraft, but it looked like the witch from the World of Warcraft. And like, she came over to me in the meditation and she was like, I am one of the keepers of the universe and there's many other masters of the universe. And I was kind of just imagining her light just like beaming in me and, like Glenn said, cleaning all the darkness out. And then I was imagining it with the people around me, my friends and family that are going through trials and tribulations and trauma, just cleaning them out and praying that it just helps them get through whatever the fuck they're going through, you know? And it was a very lucid experience, man. And like I said, man, this is just my subjective experience. There's no scientific data, truth behind it, you know? And some of you might think I'm fucking crazy, and I am a little bit, but or did a little too much acid, but
hey, like I often no, I appreciate you sharing. Again, I'll say it again, Shivang, such an intimate and personal experience and being so open about it, you know. It's like I often say on this show, man, I might be a little crazy, but I ain't fucking stupid, you know. I know what I felt and I know what I experienced. And by the way, Dean, I don't mean to ignore what you're posting in the chat there. Me and Shivang just been running our mouth, but Dean's over there. He's looking at. We got Dean interested now. We go, Dean. I told you, bro. You are welcome at my spot anytime, bro. And if you come out, we'll take a pilgrimage up to the mountain, because I can tell we got your attention about it. He posted some shit about the Lemurians, Shivang.
Oh, God, yeah.
That's true, bro. I read that stuff, too. I was alluding to it earlier that there are people who believe all this shit, like big time, man, that, you know, we've all heard of that old lost continent, Atlantis. Well, I didn't really know anything about this lost continent of Lemuria. And actually what I had even read, Dean, I can't see if you have it because it's pretty wordy there, that they did get into it with each other. There was this war between Atlantis and Lemuria, and what I read is they got into a thermonuclear war. And that they destroyed each other, and the Lemurians that were able to escape because they saw this war and what was coming went to Shasta, and that's where they started this secret civilization below. And there's another story about how supposedly after years and years of them having this underground civilization under Mount Shasta, they needed supplies. And so some of them went to down in Shasta, and some dude that worked at like some store said, "Oh my God, these fucking 7 feet tall freaks at Lemurians came in to buy supplies, and they were never seen or heard from again." So
and
I
that's
don't know,
another
man.
crazy thing, Glenn, that I don't know if you realize about Mount Shasta is that this belief system is like so commonly adopted. Like even when we're at the restaurant, like I'm thinking in my head, like I don't know if I want to ask her about the Lemurians because she's gonna think I'm crazy. And I asked one of the waitresses, I'm like, so what's up about the Lemurians? She's like, oh yeah, they're here. Just like so common
just
how we
very
think
matter
that,
of
like,
fact. Didn't think twice about
just how
it.
we think that there's fucking drugs in Detroit. Like there's drugs in Detroit. You know? They're just like they're here. And I'm like,
and
wow.
I know who you're talking about. The girl we met the first night, Heidi. She was born and raised and lived there her whole life. And she, I mean, I'd say she had to be 40-ish or something. It wasn't like she was some young kid living in a fantasy world. She was very, you could tell she had her head on straight and all. And you're right. It was just very matter of fact, man. People do really, believe that stuff. So, I like.
Were you guys seeing any of those saucer-shaped clouds around the mountain?
Well, Shivang, that's a whole other story, dude. You sure you want to go down that road?
Well, I just posted what the locals believe about those clouds. The very last one.
Well, I know, Shivang, you got a story, and we'll answer your question, Dean. While we were out there at night, Shivang is really into all that stuff. And I am too. I like, I just find it's interesting and fascinating, especially since the Fed had to, reveal all their UFO documents and all that kind of shit. And so Shivang, when we were out there at night, he was looking for UFOs. And
when I was meditating, I was trying to channel some ETs. I was like, come take me back to my home planet because I know I ain't here.
So he's got a video, and I didn't put it in there because it's just you can't see anything really. You might see like a white light real quick in the lower corner, or else I would have definitely shown it. But there was something in the sky. Now, I don't know if it might have been a small plane flying to one of the local airports. It definitely wasn't a commercial plane, if it was a plane. I definitely saw some shooting stars and other stuff out there. So, I'm just going to say, I ain't going to say it was. I ain't going to say it wasn't. I don't know. But there was something. We definitely both seen or saw something moving in the sky that we couldn't explain what it was. Could have been a shooting star. Could have been a small plane off in the distance flying to this, like a Cessna type plane. I guess by definition, for you and me, Shivang, it was a UFO. Yeah. It was an unidentified flying object. It was something. We don't know what it was, and it was unidentified. So.
I was trying to rationalize in every thought. I'm trying to think of the laws of physics in my mind, and I'm like, dude, could that be a spaceship, or could that be an aircraft? Like, would it be... I don't know, man. I don't fucking know, and I don't want to sound all hocus pocus. Like Glenn said, we were already kind of in that state of mind.
We were looking.
Maybe it was just a fucking government research airplane. It definitely wasn't a commercial airplane. That's for sure. Because it was flying way too close to the mountain. Could have been a drone. Could have been some research. I don't know.
Yeah. But anyway, with all that said, y'all, moving along, so obviously we had some very intense and powerful experiences, both during the day, during our hike up the mountain, at night and all. And then, like I said, we went on to visit some other spots that were recommended to us that are very popular around there. And so we, let's bring up the slides again, went to our next day, and you can see I made a little smiley face. That was our trip to that Mount Shasta area. And then we got this Airbnb for the second night. And that one was a cool spot. It was obviously much, much closer to the mountain. I mean, it was literally almost like right across the street from the mountain. And so it was a little bit more. It was a couple $100 a night for that one. I liked that it was closer, Shivang, but I liked the first night Airbnb better.
I liked the first spot a lot. That first spot, man. I want to just shout out whoever the people that did that, because they did a really good job. You can tell that they weren't just trying to make money. Like, they actually had a passion about Mount Shasta, and that was a beautiful spot. I would recommend it to anybody.
Yeah, we got to go on Airbnb. I got a email to put a review for them, and we will. That was a fun spot. But this one was very nice, too, doing a lot closer. So anyway, then the next day we hit this spot. You can see how close it still is to Mount Shasta, but this is Lake, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Siskiyou, Siskiou, Siskiyou, and it's a real popular and famous and well-known lake in the area there. And I'll show you another picture of it. There it is. You can tell Shivang and I were right at the shores of Lake Siskiyou. And Dean, we have a video as well. Let's go ahead and play the next video of this area to give our viewers a little bit more of a feel for what this spot was like.
Check it out, y'all. There's Mount Shasta. And we are here at what's called Lake Siskiyou. And it's beautiful. This is really kind of nice. Having the lake view. And there are people out here. I was way over there, sun as bright as can be, but it's beautiful out. It's not too hot. Air temperature is really nice. And at the mountain right there where we were up there today. We was all the way up there, not at the top, but we were definitely in Mount Shasta. Anyway, yeah, beautiful view, man. This is so cool. It's really nice. Peace.
So, Dean, I see you got a kick here. I'm talking about how peaceful it is, and Shivang brings up some Detroit rap on his phone. But this was a cool spot. I was telling Shivang, it reminded me a little bit of Lake Tahoe. Obviously the lake much smaller than Lake Tahoe, but it just kind of had that feel to it, a lake with mountains in the background.
I just wonder if those other people that were in the background, were they
What's that, Dean?
I was just wondering if the other people in the background, were they 7 feet tall? Or...
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I was laughing with Glenn because, Ice Mountain, the water company, I was literally telling Glenn, I was like, dude, I feel like Ice Mountain actually came here and took this same exact picture and put it on their fucking water bottle.
Yeah, actually, it is very, that's postcard right there. But anyway, well, let's go on to this. Actually, you can see here, this is us just vibing at the mountain and then, having a good time. And then we moved on from here, y'all, to another spot that was recommended to us by a few people. We mentioned that girl, Leslie, earlier. She highly recommended we go here, and a couple other people, that girl, Heidi. In fact, we met this girl, Heidi, the waitress, and she gave us a list of spots to check out. And then I told her, I go, hey, I got a friend, this girl back in Sac recommended we go to McLeod Falls. And remember what she said, Shivang? She goes, oh, man.
Everything.
She goes, that tops everything I just told you about. If you go anywhere, go there. And, so we had our mind made up. We were going to McLeod Falls. And look at that, y'all. There's a couple of still shots. You can see the one on the left, from a little further back, and then the close-up. And man, oh man, was this a great spot. And I'm so glad we went. They have, and keep it in mind, this is right there in the Mount Shasta area, y'all. It was, I think about a 15-minute drive, but that mountain's so freaking tall, you can still see it anywhere you go and definitely still feel the energy. Although I will say, Shivang, did you notice this, that, like I just said, you still feel the energy and the pull of the mountain, but the further away you go from it, it lessens. It lessens.
100%.
When you're on that mountain and hiking it, it is unmistakable. The gravity you feel, but the further back you got from it, it seemed to go less and less.
And like I said, even if there's something you're holding on to inside of yourself, and the closer you get, the sicker you're gonna feel.
Well, in any case, y'all, we do have some video. In this area, the McLeod Falls, they have what's called the Upper Falls, the Middle Falls, and the Lower Falls. And we got a little bit confused at times at where we were, because we didn't know if the Upper Falls was looking down on these or the Lower Falls was looking up at these. But there's actually different falls. So this particular area here is called the Mid Falls. But Dean, let's go ahead and play the next video.
Um,
And this would be,
number 8, probably.
yeah, the 8th.
All right, y'all. I just thought I'd get a footage of this. It's pretty intense. And definitely really cool. As you can see, the lower McCloud Falls area. Right here in the middle of this mountain here. Me and Shivang were just saying this is like Jurassic Park, prehistoric type stuff. It's really very cool spot. I'm so glad that we had people recommend this to us to come check out. And definitely so glad that we
Yeah, so again, I know, as we were watching, I was thinking to myself, anybody watching might be like, oh, Jesus Christ, sitting here watching some guy's fucking home movies, of his vacation. So we do appreciate all our viewers and listeners hanging with us on the podcast. And like I said earlier, I was on the fence even about sharing this. Like, hey, I don't want to, sway anybody else's, experience. And so Kelly just chimed in, absolutely beautiful. And I appreciate that, Kelly, because like I said, I was like, well, I want everyone to experience it for themselves.
Right.
But hopefully by showing some of this stuff, it might inspire someone else to go. Now, Dean, I got to give you a heads up about something, and this is all on me. I meant to mention to you before the podcast that the next video is inverted. It's you've been telling me to film videos like widthwise for weeks, literally, and Shivang filmed the next video. And
God.
the clip is, a widthwise video. It's of me, on this rock that you see here in the middle of the picture on the left. I actually walked through the water and sat on the rock, and I'm there facing the waterfalls meditating. And I sat there taking in the power and the energy of that fall for about 10 minutes. So, and Shivang got a video, just a short, I think it's about a 10-second video clip. It's not very long. So we can skip right over it, but if you want to,
Oh, let's
if you can
play
invert
it.
it.
Everybody just turn your heads this way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
Okay.
didn't know if you could hear me while the video's playing, but it was only a 10-second one.
Yep.
But I think, even though it was inverted, it gives you guys the idea that you can literally go walk right up to these falls, walk through this water, and sit out there and just meditate and feel the energy of that area. It was really, really cool, y'all. And so anyway, let me go to this pic here. And I posted this on social media. I called this my yin yang picture because here I turned around from facing the falls, and this was staged. I posed for these. Shivang took a picture of me meditating on the left and flexing on the right. And, it reminded me of kind of my routine sometimes. Like every Wednesday, I go to yoga, and then after yoga, I go to the gym. And it's kind of like a yin yang thing. So I just thought that was a cool pic. And, I think we have another video now. We're almost done with the videos, but let's go to the next video, Dean. I know it's somewhere at the falls. I just don't remember exactly what it was. But
All right, y'all. I get another video. That's where I was. Way the hell down there. And walked all the way down there and all the way back up. Definitely a beautiful spot. The Cloud Falls.
all right, so there you go. That was from the look down on these from up above. We just kind of drove a little ways down the road in this park area to go get that view. So let's go to the next video, Dean. We're almost done with these videos just to give people a little bit more of a feel of the area there.
All right. Here at the upper falls area of McCloud Falls. Yeah, it's just so beautiful here. Get a little video of this. This is peaceful here. This is very peaceful. And it goes down that way. That's where the source comes from, somewhere up there.
So that one is at the upper falls, but we didn't walk the trail all the way back to the full view. That was just kind of like where the source was. If you remember, Shivang, you were pretty tired out and didn't want to go hiking anymore. And I said, well, I'm at least going over there to see it. And then I think we have one final video where we drove to the lower falls area. And I got to tell you, we didn't go in the water or kind of go right down to this area. I took this video from a viewing spot up above it. And as I say in the narration for this next video, I will definitely go back to this spot one day to go and feel the energy of this fall and swim in the water. Let's take a look and listen to that one, Dean.
So this is a really cool spot. This is the lower McCloud Falls. Pretty touristy here. You can see all them people there. Shit people. Even up here behind me on this lookout point. Yeah, not a shit ton, but there's definitely people. And, people swimming in the water and all that. I'd do it too, but that boy Shivang, he can't keep up with me. Even when Mark was here visiting, man, them boys can't keep up with me. With my fucking motivated ass, it's like wiped out. But I had to come up and see the spot. Definitely gonna come back here one day, because I want to sit right there where that couple's sitting. And I definitely want to swim in that water. So, good reason, not that I need an excuse, a good reason to come back and visit, because this is a beautiful spot. This is the lower falls area of McCloud Falls, and it is beautiful. So glad we came.
Yeah, so glad we came, y'all. And Shivang, I couldn't resist.
Wiped out.
Hey, I couldn't resist razzing you a little bit. Yeah, Shivang was, we did a lot of hiking, y'all. You were a trooper, I will say that, you know.
Can't keep up with Glenn, though, man.
Well,
He's built different.
You know, I will tell you, you guys, not to get too far off topic, but, you know, one of the topics we talk about on this program is exercise and fitness. And I did think to myself, holy shit, if I wasn't working out at the gym on the regular, I wouldn't have been able to hike that mountain. I mean, even because I am in such great shape, I don't, you know, I ain't fucking, you know, too shy to say it, you know, I'm in probably the best shape I've been in my life. And if you remember, Shivang, after we got back that night after hiking, I said, God damn, man, my calves are killing me. That's where I felt it in the calves. And my calf, I work my legs regularly at the gym, and I still fit. So you got to be in pretty good shape to do that.
Make sure you hydrate too, man, because there were times where my dumbass just went blindly, didn't bring enough water, and I was regretting it after, but it made me feel like a warrior that I got through it. But
yeah, and I'm so grateful you did. And you know, that kind of, we're going to go into the next you know, segment of the show here, y'all. It kind of wraps up everything that, you know, we wanted to talk about and that we did up at Mount Shasta and the Mount Shasta area, you know, Lake Siskiyou and McCloud Falls. And, you know, I hope you found our conversation and everything about our experience there interesting, entertaining, and enlightening, perhaps, and maybe motivated you to seriously consider a trip to Mount Shasta. I just can't recommend it enough to anyone. This program, as we talk about all the time, is geared toward people, trying to get off dope or live clean and sober, that are off the shit. But really for anyone, what a fantastic experience. Like I said, y'all, all these crazy fucking stories we've been talking about, from UFOs to lost continent, Lemurians living under the mountain, to the great creator residing there, spirit. Again, I take all that kind of stuff with a grain of salt. What I will tell you that I am absolutely certain of is, as I said earlier in this podcast, there's something about Mount Shasta. And I think every person needs to experience that for themselves, what that is for them. Is that a good way to describe it, Shivang, would you say?
100%. There's something there. And, I was just thinking while you were sharing that, man, take a skeptic with you. I'm really curious on what their experience would be.
Yeah. Well, anyways, y'all, again, I sincerely do hope you enjoyed all that content, y'all. But as we always do on this podcast, we got a little time. We went actually almost 2 hours to the nose doing the intro to the show and going through those videos and slides. Hope you enjoyed that. But we're going to touch on a little bit of the opioid epidemic in the news. We got just a few stories there. I think, a couple of current events that we'll talk about. There's a recovery convention coming up and a music show I wanted to talk about briefly. And then we'll bring it full circle with a few funny memes and wrap the show up. And so with all that said, let's go into the opioid news. Do we have that slide, Andy, Dean?
My goodness.
There it is. That's our slide when we transition into the news. And, I laugh about it and have good, sense of humor. Although, as we all know, it ain't fucking funny, man. It's like people are dying out there on a daily basis. Like we say in the introduction to this show, by the time we finish this program, based on the latest hard stats, not numbers that we make up, these are governmental statistics that have, think tanks and research groups that do these reports, that 8 to 10 people will die in the United States by the time we finish this podcast, or will have died. It's fucking insane. And again, going back to the reason why I even do this podcast, y'all, that we do this podcast, because I don't think of it as mine. I really don't. I think of it as ours. I've said many times, kind of had an idea and a vision to do it, but this podcast truly has taken on a life of its own. And Shivang, I can't thank you enough for being a guest on the podcast again today, because you've been on with us before. And of course, Dean, I can't thank you enough for agreeing to work with me on this podcast and do all the wonderful things you do to keep us going. So with all that said, we do we found that we've just kind of developed this little bit of a format that we do, and one of the things is we do like to keep up with opioid stories in the news, and this one caught our eye because it literally just came out Friday that in Oregon, and this is not unique, by the way, y'all, we come across stories like this all over the country every single week. And just thought I'd show this one because I was going to ask you, if you remember, Shivang, before we went on the air, I said, so bro, do you think the fentanyl and opioid epidemic is getting better or is it getting worse? What do you think? You remember me asking you that?
I do. And I've been trying to think of an answer, and honestly, I mean, I haven't studied too much of the statistics, so I don't really know if the numbers of deaths in the last year compared to this year are greater or less, but I think we live in a time that there's more education and awareness amongst societies, and I think that's a very positive thing, and more people, there's less of a stigma with the whole being an addict and addiction and all that kind of stuff. So I think we're in a good time, but also I also stand true to the belief that as long as there's going to be users, there's going to be fucking dealers.
Yeah.
As long as people want to get high, there's going to be drugs. You know?
Yeah.
So,
Well, and then when you come across stories like this, you can't help but think to yourself, well, it don't look like it's getting any fucking
Right.
better here in, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, y'all, because I'm not from there, but in what looks to be Multnomah, is that how you'd say that? Apologies to anybody from there if I'm not saying it right, but Multnomah County in the Portland, Oregon area, just this past week, sheriff's deputies found what is a record, the largest synthetic opioid seizure in the agency's history, over $400,000 worth of fentanyl. Just fucking crazy. So, in my humble opinion, basically, because I do keep up on this stuff. I'm researching and keeping my eyes open for stories like this all the time. So, you know, if it's something I think is relevant enough, we'll talk about it on the podcast. I see stories like this all the fucking time. And so let's go to the next slide, and we're going to go all the way across the country to your hometown, Shivang, my hometown too, although I haven't lived there in over 30 years. You know, this is not far from where you live, Shivang. And I know you don't mind me saying you live in Livonia, which is a suburb of Detroit. Well, Pontiac is also a suburb of Detroit. And this story caught my attention, kind of fucking blows my mind. This landlord goes to collect some overdue rent from these tenants he's renting a place to in Pontiac, and he finds them passed out from an opiate overdose. And luckily, as it says there, he got to them just in time and called 911. And, you know, it says you could see at the bottom of the story, I didn't put the whole story there, but he found a little pile of powder inside, and the tenants there, which incidentally, they had 5 kids, overdosed. And, you know, man, we did, you know, it reminds me, we did a whole episode, we did a couple episodes about this whole thing of addicts and children. If you remember, Dean, we did one on Mother's Day about child custody and opiate addiction, and how, you know, mothers and parents lose custody of their children because they're so hooked on the fucking dope and that kind of stuff. So, not to get too far off topic, y'all, but if that catches your interest, go back and look at some of our previous episodes, and there is one in there. I think it was called Child Custody and Opiate Addiction. And again, you can find all of them on the Dare Me Podcast YouTube channel. Please like, subscribe, and do all the things. But you click on that video tab, you'll see all the episodes there. And so this particular story reminded me of that. And, you know, I thought we'd take just a brief moment to talk about this story a little bit more, because and I'm curious your opinion on this too, Shivang, because at first glance, and I think maybe even especially for people who are not addicts or familiar even with this whole addiction thing or the recovery community or whatever, they read this and say, that's a fucking scum of the earth, man. What kind of fucking people, you know, OD, got 5 kids, you know, can't even pay their fucking rent, you know, God. And I'm just being honest, y'all. You know, especially with my history of addiction, I have compassion for people like this, because clearly there's something seriously, seriously wrong going on here. Just like I mentioned, we did that whole podcast all about child custody and mothers losing custody of their kids because the addiction has them by the fucking kahunas and they can't break it. You know, no decent parent is going to, you know, do that intentionally to their children. But when addiction takes a hold like that, you know, this is the kind of stuff that happens. So I personally, again, I try not to get political or give opinions on things so much on this program, because I don't want to alienate anyone from the information we're providing that might help someone. Certainly, I have my opinions and all that stuff. I just try not to go into them too much on this show. I do sometimes. I'll go off on little tangents. Anyhow, with all that said, Shivang, like I asked, you know, how does a story like this hit you? You know, do you think of the guy like these fucking people? I can't believe it, or is it compassion or maybe a little of both?
It's definitely kind of like you said. I mean, it's definitely mixed emotions. I mean, me being who I am and having my track record and my history and my issue with opioids in the past, I definitely have that sense of empathy, but I also, the other half of me is like, man, like, you got fucking kids, like, get your shit together, and kind of how I had to learn myself eventually. I had to hit reality, like, dude, get your fucking shit together, So there's definitely a little bit of both, man. And, I don't know, man. I think we live in a time that, there's some other countries I feel like that are a little more advanced maybe than we are in terms of this whole addiction recovery. But I think the United States is starting to open its eyes, and I'm hearing more about like clean needle programs and fentanyl testing kits and people giving out fucking Naloxone and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know, man. I have mixed emotions about it, but like you said, my opinion don't fucking matter. At the end of the day, people are dying. That is the reality. So
well,
sad.
I appreciate that, Shivang. Dean, I'd like to ask you the same question, if you don't mind. Obviously, Shivang and I are, coming at it more from what we'll call the addiction recovery angle and all that stuff. And, I don't mean to speak for you or tell your story. Your life's taken a little bit of a different path. So for someone who's not been involved in this kind of thing at maybe the level Shivang and I have, how does a story like this hit you? Do you have compassion for these people, or do you think of them like, who the fuck could do that that's got 5 kids, or are you like Shivang, kind of a little bit of both?
I think there's a whole lot of non-story here. I mean, there's just there's no it's all after the fact. Pontiac landlord saves tenants. I mean, okay, you can read into it any direction you want, but unless they're saying, I don't know. I mean,
you're on the fence here. I can tell you're trying to decide how you feel about it. It sounds like it's a tough one.
It's the situation that we're all involved in, no matter what your financial literacy
level
is, maybe your economic level. This one particular drug seems to have affected everyone across the plane. I mean, back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, it was the cocaine era where you really had to afford. That was one of those, the high society drugs. Where you didn't have most people just didn't have it. And then what happened? They came out with crack cocaine, because now they had to make it cheaper for a whole different group of people. So we're just kind of repeating the same old thing. I mean, fentanyl, I think, just fell in our laps. I mean, everything, the whole opioid thing just fell in our laps, and of course that's why we're dealing with these court cases and drug companies trying to hold them responsible. And
well,
are they really going to be held responsible, or are they just going to be just another slap on the wrist?
Well, Dean, that is, and I appreciate your interest, or your input, I meant to say, and that is the perfect transition into our next news story. Are they going to be held accountable? So, as we've talked about on this podcast, and for anyone who's been following along on this in the news, you know that recently, God, what's it been? We talked about this in depth on the podcast maybe a little over a month ago, that Purdue Pharma, which was considered to be the main one that fueled the opioid epidemic, although there's definitely others, and one of which we're going to talk about in a moment. But they reached this settlement to pay out billions of dollars to help with cleaning up the mess that was created in the U.S. from the opioid crisis. And part of that settlement, though, was that the Sackler family, who is the family that owned and Purdue Pharma and fueled this whole thing, became what's the word I'm looking for? They immune, if you will, that they couldn't be sued like in civil court or sued personally if they did this settlement. And so the U.S. Supreme Court has been, well, here, I'll just read the headline. U.S. tells Supreme Court that Purdue bankruptcy settlement for opioid lawsuits abuses the law. And when it says U.S., it's referring to, as you'll see in this one paragraph here, the U.S. Department of Justice. And this story, by the way, was just a couple of days ago, last Friday. The Department of Justice asked the U.S. Supreme Court to stop Purdue Pharma from proceeding with a bankruptcy settlement that protects it, Sackler family owners from lawsuits. And that was a stipulation that Purdue had as part of their settlement, that they would pay all these $1 billion if they became immune. That's the word I was looking for. To these lawsuits. And so that's what's happened. That's what was agreed to, and they're supposed to be starting to distribute the money, although we haven't heard a lot about that in the news yet. And we're going to try to play Watchdog Group, just another one out there, to see how the money is distributed. It's supposed to go to things like treatment and prevention and rehab and this and that and the other, and Narcan and all these other things. This is billions of dollars that's being divvied up across the country to each state, each county, each city. There's going to be some shit in the game, and that some of that money is going to end up in somebody's pocket where it ain't supposed to. So yeah, every fucking watchdog group we can have out there, including ourselves, to keep an eye on this and how that money gets distributed is a good thing. But here in the meantime, our own U.S. Department of Justice is saying, wait a minute, wait. They're telling the Supreme Court this is fucked up, man. Yeah, it's great that they're paying out this billions of dollars, but their catch is that they can't fucking be sued over the mess they created. So I say I don't give opinions on the show, but obviously I'll get a little wired up about that one, because I do have an opinion about that. But anyway, let's move on to the next story, which kind of ties into this one. Another pharmacy, drug maker, again, help me out with the pronunciation, Melancrot, I think is how you say it. They're trying to avoid having to pay an opioid settlement to victims. And they're saying that, and this was originally reported, we got this off of NPR's website, but as it says, was originally reported by the Wall Street Journal. And they're saying that if they pay out these settlements, they're going to go bankrupt. So they're trying to get out of it. So here again, you got to ask the question, just kind of like what I was asking with the, the people who were passed out when the landlord came to get the rent. Do you think they should not have to pay so they don't file bankruptcy and all their shareholders lose money and they can't do research on other drugs that could be helpful to us all? Or should they have to pay out all this fucking money even if they do? Quite frankly, I don't mind giving you my opinion on this. They need to fucking pay for the mess that they created and help clean it up, We had that boy Dennis Silvaggio on the show several weeks back, the criminal defense attorney from Orlando, and we asked his opinion on some of these settlements and, where the money's going. And he, flat out said that he would like to see more of this money go to the families of people who lost, family members that died, whether it was their son, their daughter, their mother, their father, what have you. And man, I couldn't agree with them more. I would like to see more of it go to that, but it seems like most of it is being earmarked for things like, treatment, prevention, et cetera, and whatnot. But I just thought I'd point this one out, y'all, because like I said, as a watchdog of all this, here's one of these fucking pharmacies trying to get out of it, like, oh, wait a minute, yeah, well, we talked about it and agreed to pay this much, but now we're having second thoughts and we want to back out. What? So anyway, y'all, that's it in the news this week. Let's transition. Oh, wait, we got one more story. I forgot. We have this one, too. This is actually pretty good news. We've all heard about Narcan, or naloxone. Is that the proper way to pronounce it? Yeah. Which is an antidote for people who are, OD'd on opioids. And we've all heard of Narcan. It's become so common now. But now there's another one that's been approved. And it's called Revive, Rivive, Revive. And it's basically the same thing, but this one is being manufactured, I guess, and distributed by a nonprofit. And so the good news there, as it says in some of the information here, is that it certainly could result in bringing cheaper and free doses of Narcan, so people don't have to pay for it. And it's a lifesaver. So thought we'd talk a little bit about that. I thought that was a good news story, to kind of wrap up the news on. I forgot we had that one in there. So anyway, let's transition from this, and then we're going to bring this thing full circle in just a little bit to a couple of current events. There is a recovery convention that I'm going to, and now I found out that boy Shivang is going to too, and it's one of my favorite ones. I've been to it many times over the years. Certainly last couple of years, and it's the South Florida Regional Convention of Narcotics Anonymous. A lot of people call it SFRICNA for short. Just going to put my disclaimer out there like I do every episode. I ain't no fucking representative, NA. I ain't trying to represent or break no traditions or nothing else. I'm just another guy trying to stay clean another day longer, and this information we're sharing is all common knowledge information that anybody can get on the internet. I am an NA guy. I have been since I was a kid, 24 years old. I'm 61 now, and I can damn sure talk about it if I want to. And if you don't fucking like it, get your own goddamn podcast. Talk about whatever the hell you want to. So, I've never gotten any heat or shade thrown my way about talking about 12-step programs because for those of us that know, there's a tradition, Shivang, as you know, that says, we need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. And we got to remember, those traditions were written in 1935 when AA was founded. There wasn't even fucking really radio or TV existed, let alone the internet or social media or any other goddamn thing like that. And then, of course, they were adapted into NA in 53. And I respect those traditions, and they certainly mean some different things to different people. It's just like verses in the Bible are interpreted different ways. Traditions in the various 12-step programs are sometimes interpreted different ways. So my thoughts and feelings, without going too much off on a tangent there, is by putting my little disclaimer out there. Hey, I'm not trying to represent or get in any political thing, but I can damn sure talk about them if I want to try to help people who maybe aren't familiar with them to understand a little bit more about what they're about and decide if that may or may not be right for them. I happen to love going to events like this. There's conventions for NAAA, GA, OA, fucking A that go on all week, every month, all year long, all around the country and literally other parts of the world. This happens to be one of my favorite ones. If I recall correctly, they probably draw about 5,000 people each year or so from around the country and other parts of the world. South Florida, popular destination. And this one happens to be in the Fort Myers area in Bonita Springs. And here's the registration information. Again, it's all available online. Yeah, it's going to be fun, isn't it? And so, me and Shivang are actually flying into Miami, and we're going to visit that boy G Money, my son, Glenn.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, some of y'all know Glenn. He's been a guest on the podcast, and we talked today on the phone. And he's going to jump on with us when we're visiting him in Miami. Him and his beautiful wife, my daughter-in-law, Juana, are actually on their way back to Miami from Salt Lake City, Utah, which I didn't go into it too much, but me and him agreed we're going to talk more about it when we're in Miami and he's on the podcast. But him and Juana were there for the big UFC 291 fight last night. And if you follow our stuff in this podcast, you know that G and I know you are too, Shivang, big fans of Dustin the Diamond Poirier, who was beaten last night by another UFC fighter I actually very much like is Justin Gaethje. And holy fucking cow, talk about a dramatic finish to a fight, man. Oh, man. And I'll say this about Dustin. I saw him a little bit of his post fight press conference. What a classy guy.
Right.
He's a classy guy, not a sore loser or anything like that. Gave props to
Yeah.
Justin. And you know what? For those of us that follow that kind of stuff, kind of getting off topic a little bit, that was their second fight. Dustin won the first one. Justin won the second one, and there's this popular thing in the USC where they do trilogies, and we have a feeling there's going to be a rubber match. We got a person in the chat. I'm not sure who Evan is, but welcome to
my
the
boy,
podcast,
yeah.
Evan. And he said Poirier got smacked, and I'm sure he'd be the first to admit it that he definitely did, man. Oh, if you didn't see the way that fight ended, and you're into that kind of stuff, go check it out on YouTube or whatever. I guarantee there's a
I love
shit
the
ton
respect
of videos.
between them because even
Yeah.
Gaethje after the fight when they interviewed him, he said Dustin Poirier is my favorite fighter in the world, man.
Yeah.
And that's what I was thinking because I'm a Dustin guy too. I wanted to see him win, man. But if there's one guy that I wouldn't mind having won over Dustin would be Gaethje. I respect him.
I
He's a
agree.
good dude,
I agree. I couldn't agree more. And I'll just say this: we're hoping to have Dustin on the podcast one day. Dustin, if you see this,
Down
bro,
in the dust, baby.
for those again that follow my stuff, and G's been a guest on the show. He's kind of sort of buddies with Dustin. Dustin has organization that I highly encourage you to check out online called the Good Fight Foundation, and it's a nonprofit, and they do good work, y'all, helping like young kids with cancer and things to that nature. You get the idea. You can read all about them online. They do good work. And anyway, my son's been to some of his events for that thing. And I actually met Dustin with Glenn one time. We went to a meet and greet down in Lauderdale a few years back, and just such a nice guy. But anyway, I kind of getting off topic. But, hey, G, Awana, sorry our boy didn't win and you went all the way to Salt Lake City. But I saw that they did get to do some touristy stuff and all. And, just that whole fucking card was amazing.
Crazy.
Not just the Dustin Justin fight. There were some other good fights on that card too. Lewis, the heavyweight.
Lewis knee though. Oh my god.
God.
Man.
So they saw a hell of a show, but in any case, we're going to talk more about that and do a little more deep dive into that whole experience when we're in Miami. And that should be a fun show because, we'll have Shivang on there. We'll have G on there. Of course, me running my mouth, Dean on there. That'll be fun. That's coming up in a couple weeks.
Sorry, I just jumped ahead to the leg kick to Dustin's head there.
Oh, my
and I was
God.
like, oh,
I
wow.
told you.
Man.
Yeah, that's how he went down. For those who may be still with us or come across as that didn't see it, it was intense.
I had to take a peek. So
Yeah. Oh God. But anyway, so back to this convention. We're flying into Miami. We're gonna spend a couple days there, and then hop in a car, and it's just like a couple hours over to the other side of the coast of Florida, over to the West Coast, and we're gonna spend a few days here. If you happen to be going to this convention, or you do, and you see us, please come up and say hello. Don't be shy. Come up and say, "Hey, man, what's happening?" And if you like the podcast, please tell us that too. If you don't like it, tell us that. What's that old saying in the business, Dean? Any attention is better than no attention at all when you're trying to promote a show or whatever. But like I said, man, we haven't had any shade thrown our way or gotten any heat. I think we are doing good work and good stuff, and hopefully, if somebody's watching and they're looking for a recovery-oriented event to go to, might be able to make it to this one. It's a lot of fun, y'all. And if you're somebody new to getting clean, living clean, the recovery life and all that, these conventions are so fucking awesome because they have all kinds of seminars from like 8 o'clock in the morning all day long. They have pool parties. You can see here they got a water park. They have big speaker meetings. They bring speakers in from all over the country and other parts of the world that have these great motivational speeches about getting clean, living clean. You can see they have a big banquet. The theme this year is tropical attire. So me and Shivang were saying we got to go get some fucking
Tommy Bahama,
hula
baby.
shirts or some shit, you know. It's just a lot of fun, and you'll meet a lot of like-minded people, and you know, and I believe in that old saying, man, strength comes in numbers, and when you leave these conventions, man, you ride the wave of that for weeks after. Me and you, Shivang, we've been to the couple of conventions.
yeah.
We went to one in Florida, the
Fricna,
Fricna
Dacna,
and
fucking
Merkna.
Merkna.
Yeah. So anyway, y'all, I can't encourage you enough to check this one out, and this is one that we'll be at. So if you do see us, please come say hi. Here is another current event, and I'm so happy to announce this, y'all. I got my motherfucking ticket. I'm going to see one of my favorite artists from the land down under, this young girl, Mallrat. And she's doing just a few shows here in the States and then one in Canada. And I message her and DM her, and she replies to my shit. It fucking blows my mind, you know. And I told her, when you going to have some dates in the States? And she had been saying soon. And so these were announced, and I'm going to see her in San Francisco on September 12th, and this is a small club. I've never been there, but I checked it out online. It's called Bimbo's 365 Club, and tickets are not expensive at all. You can get tickets for like $25-30. And if you don't know who Mallrat is, I highly encourage you go check her out, look her up on YouTube, do a deep dive into her stuff. She's been around for several years. You know who she collabs with, Shivang, is that girl Benny. Yeah,
Shout
that
out
you
Benny,
and I.
man.
Shout out Benny.
Great
Yeah.
artist.
Well, hey, Mallrat and Benny just actually wrote and performed the theme song for the FIFA soccer tournament, you know, the women's soccer tournament. And, you know, they have a theme song for that thing every year, and they did it this year. And so, yeah, man, Mallrat, she's the real deal, y'all, and great music. She has this tune, Rockstar, that I love, man. Anyway, go check her out, y'all. I couldn't resist giving that girl Mallrat a plug. Let's sell out Bimbos in San Francisco and those other shows. I actually thought about going down to the Troubadour in L.A., but I don't want to have to put pressure on myself to make it all the way back to San Fran for the show the next night. But anyway, shout out Mallrat and Benny too. So anyway, yep, there's I just thought I'd show this. This is my confirmation of my ticket, y'all. And there's a picture of Mallrat. You can see right there. Beautiful young girl in her 20s and such a talented artist from Australia. So anyway, y'all, we're just about done with the show. We're going to go into just a couple of memes. Well, here we were talking about Benny, Shivang, and remember you and I talked about this, and I thought this kind of tied into the whole Mount Shasta thing. A good way to wrap up the show. And I had seen these already before Benny even posted them, but I just thought it was kind of cool. We love her so much that she's kind of into the same type of stuff we are, you know, vibes and energy. And you can see the photo on the left is a photo from the Webb Space Telescope of this Eye of God nebula. And she posted this, fascinating similarities between the human body and the universe. Look at that one. And then this one's pretty bizarre, too. She put side by side this picture of this, you know, photo of the universe and a brain cell. And it's so fucking bizarre, especially if you look at the one in the universe. There's a bright light in the middle and then the one below it. You know, people talk about us living in the Matrix and all that shit. This is just bizarre. And then look at this one. Scientists discover the largest black hole ever, over 30 billion times the size of our sun. And she wrote, uh-oh. You know. But anyway, shout out Benny again. We're just so thrilled to see you like following, you know, the same kind of fascinating stuff me and Shivang are into about the universe. But hey, you know, it just goes right back to everything we talked about Shasta. You know, you just got to have an open mind about this kind of stuff because, man, the stuff we're learning about the universe, what seems almost anymore like on a daily basis, just blows my mind. And, you know, not getting too far off topic, but, you know, Shivang, you and I talked about this a little bit. You know, you should do a whole episode of the show maybe on this, how people seem to have this fear of death and like the biggest thing we all have anxiety over, you know, and not that I'm looking forward to checking out or anything, especially anymore now that I'm clean and sober, feeling great, have peace, and living my best life. I'll also say the more I learn about the universe, the more I go to places like Mount Shasta, things like that, feel the vibes, feel the energy, be open-minded, you know, I seem to have less anxiety about when that time comes. You know, hopefully I'm not freaked out, you know. You know, it's like we were talking about, not to sound morbid, but fuck, man, people die all fucking day, every single fucking day, you know.
Yeah. Definitely, man. And this picture definitely reminds me of some realization I had like years ago. And it was like a mind blowing, like aha thing. And it's like, if you think about it, in our fucking, in our universe, right? At the middle of every galaxy, there's a fucking black hole. And then there's less dense things that are orbiting it, all these solar systems. And like, I remember one time thinking, like, even if you look at an atom is designed the same way. The smallest particle, there's a fucking neutron in the nucleus in the middle, and then the electrons orbiting it. And it kind of just blew my mind how the smallest scale to the largest scale, it has the same way that things operate, you know.
And you can't even see them. Can't see atoms, can't see molecules,
Right.
you know, with the unaided eye. It's just amazing.
Crazy.
Anyway, though, y'all, I thought we'd wrap up the show with a little humor. So, Shivang, you and I talked about this. I'm going to piss off some of my old-timer friends in the program. That's about, and, you know, God bless this guy, whoever he is or was or whatever. I mean, that's somebody's father or husband or whatever. But me and Shivang joke about it all the time, but half serious that, you know, when you're a person involved in the 12-step programs, and not to scare anybody away who may be new or thinking about attending, but sometimes you do come across these old-timers who've been around, you know, AA, NA, fucking A, whatever, pick one. I ain't picking on any of them, and they're like, this is the way you do it, and that's the way it is, whether you like it or not, and, man, we're just like, oh, fuck all that, you know. It's like I've been telling you lately, Shivang, you know, I'm at a place in my life where I just live by that. Hey, take what you need and leave the rest. Not everything's necessarily going to apply today. Maybe it will down the road, but I'm taking what I need and leaving the rest for now. And I just thought this was funny. I subscribe to a Facebook page, and I think you do too. It's called Offensive Recovery Memes. And they certainly could be offensive to some people, but if you subscribe to the page, you know what you're getting. And it's so funny sometimes reading the comments because people literally will get offended, and some of us will be like, dude, you fucking subscribe to a page called Offensive Recovery Memes, and now you're getting offended. You know, what the hell? Yeah. So you got to have a sense of humor. And so this guy says you need to work the steps so you can be happy, joyous, and free like me. You know, you don't look too happy, joyous, and free, man. I've said it before. It's like, I joke around, but I say it a lot, man. You know, I'm getting older, but I refuse to grow up, you know, and I hope I never become a cranky old fucking man like that guy looks like he is, whoever he may be. God bless him.
I just wanted to reinstate something you said, Glenn, that I think is so important for viewers, man. For anybody that might be in a stage that's getting clean and you're like, I don't know what path to go. I don't know if this recovery shit's for me. Something that Glenn just said that I have to keep reminding myself, take what you fucking need and leave the rest. You know, there's a lot of beauty and a lot of things you can learn. But if you're looking for differences, you walk in a meeting, and no offense to this guy, and you see a motherfucker like that, if I walk in, I'm like, man, I'm learning about peace from this motherfucker.
Right.
I can really talk my way out that bitch and then deprive myself of all the beauties and all the things that can come if I, you know, take what I need and leave the rest.
You know? Well, you know, we talked about that too, Shivang. That boy Mark, a friend of mine, he's been on the podcast, you know, when we took a trip to Tahoe, where he said that too, that, you know, sometimes people will get to this point here where they're so fucking cranky, and he'll think to himself, that's what 25 years looks like? That's what 30 years clean looks like? I don't want nothing to fucking do with that. You know, so we have to remember, like I like to say, don't judge the whole program by one individual that may be like this. And again, no disrespect to this guy. You know, we don't even know if this guy is in the program or if he even still alive or whatever. Somebody just posted a meme because he obviously looks irritated. But what he represents is that there are new people who see some of these cranky ass old timers who, you know, are what we call book thumpers, you know, and they say, fuck, if that's what 20 years clean look like, I don't want nothing to fucking do with that, you know? And so we got to remember, too, that you can't judge the program by one meeting, one group of people, and certainly not one individual. Don't label it. Don't stereotype the whole group of recovering people because of the action of one person. There's another saying I like to repeat that I was taught. When you go to groups like NA, fucking A, whatever, some are sicker than others, and some are sicker than most. You know, what do you walk into a 12-step meeting and think everybody's going to be perfect?
Right.
Did you think that when you went to the bar, that everybody in the bar was perfect? Or when you went to the dope house, everybody was perfect? So now all of a sudden you go to a 12-step meeting, and if not everybody's perfect, well, then this ain't for me. Them motherfuckers are all fucked up. What? You know, stick around till you meet some people like Shivang and I met in a 12-step program, and we're like bros, you know? And it's like...
I'm so glad he reinstated that because, you know, I know it's something that people might overlook, but the reality is something like that has walked people like me out of the fucking meetings before, and I had to come back and realize, like, dude, like, you can't just expect fucking perfection and, you know, from everybody. So I think it's an important topic because I'm sure there's a lot of younger people that might be going through hell, through withdrawals that, you know, that might have to
think
hear
that this ain't for me, and don't cut yourself short.
Right.
Well, hey, we got to give equal time to the women. And I thought you'd get a kick out of this one, Shivang.
I remember when you sent me this, I wanted to fucking post it so bad because I knew people were going to feel some type of way.
Yeah. And hey, y'all, I'm giving my disclaimer. I don't come up with these things. I monitor all these online all week long. I'm on fucking all the platforms, and I see ones that catch my attention, and I'll copy them for the show. And Shivang, you and I talk about this a lot because we're both into fitness, and you know, although we've been having a lot of treat meals since you've been here visiting, which is hey, it's all good. Like G says, we earned it, we deserve it, man. We watch our health, but this is what happens sometimes, and not even just with people, you know, who are non-ax or whatever, but a lot of people come in the program. And they put the dope down, or how'd you say it? They put the spoon down and pick up the fork. And so if you're not paying close attention here, y'all, you see this older lady with curlers in her hair. She's got looks like a fucking Big Mac, a bottle of sugar water Coke, you know. I'm sitting here drinking mine, but I got Coke Zero. You know, I don't drink regular soda anymore. I try to monitor my sugar. And then whatever else she's got there, it looks like she's got some kind of meds and Prozac. That green box is Prozac. So, you know, and we're not judging, you know. It's like, do you? The point is, she can sit there and do all that shit, and I get it, it's a meme, but because this person smokes weed, they're a fucking drug addict, you know. And again, you know, I always say I try to stay away from opinions on this program. You know, I love that Cat Williams comedy bit where he's like, if you ain't fucking smoking weed, what's wrong with you, man? You know, he's like,
he said the 3 side effects: hungry, happy, and sleepy.
Yeah, and he said it's a plant, and if you just happen to catch it on fire and breathe in the smoke, there are effects. But for drugs, you gotta do something to that shit. Put water, baking soda, and then he goes, I wrote a recipe.
Shout out Cat Williams.
Yeah, oh, he's funny. I love him. He's like probably one of my favorite comedians. I mean, I love all the other guys, you know, Kevin Hart and all them other guys. But, man, if you don't know Cat Williams, go check him out. But anyway, the point is, you know, of all the drugs, here, I'm a recovering drug addict. I don't fuck with this shit anymore, but I used to love smoking weed, you know what I mean? And we'll get into a whole podcast. I've thought serious about doing one just about harm reduction. You know, there are people who, you know, in AA, they smoke weed. They call it the marijuana maintenance program. And I've talked on this podcast, man, who I got a whole list of family members that are no longer with us who, had they been able to put the bottle down and just smoke weed, they probably would have lived another 20, 25, 30 years of their life. But that fucking booze, man, and get cirrhosis, kidney problems, all that other shit, you know. So I'm not endorsing smoking weed. I'm not saying smoke weed. I'm not saying don't. Do you? I just thought this was an interesting meme
That one
could
gave me a
generate
chuckle.
conversation.
It definitely gave me a chuckle.
You know, we talk about it, Shivang. People come into rooms and, you know, it's like they're fucking strung out on caffeine, drinking coffee left and right, smoking fucking cigarettes. And, man, it's real easy to start pointing the finger at somebody else when, you know, you remember there's three pointing back at you, you know. So
that's what I was going to say. I think the greater moral from a funny picture like this is just like, don't accept everybody, you know, just love everybody wherever they're fucking at in their journeys.
Thank you.
If they're doing something different, just love people.
Yeah, that's
man,
a
you know?
great way to
And
put it.
I know that might sound all
No,
flowery
no,
and like
I get it,
he's
bro.
a Detroit kid. Why is he talking about love and shit? But you know, that's what I get from it. You know, just accepting people that are different than me.
Yeah,
you know?
and isn't it interesting how just two little memes like that, one of some cranky old timer, you know, and then this one can generate such deep conversation. But anyway, let's move on to the next one here. And I thought this was kind of funny and went kind of right along with our podcast. You know, when your friend starts drunk crying out of nowhere and you're at dinner with them or lunch or whatever, whether you're a user or not, you know, a drinker or not, it's just like, what the fuck? Because, you know, the fact is, man, alcohol affects different people different ways. You know, some get angry, some get aggressive, and some get very emotional. And it's like, this has happened to me, bro. Like, what the fuck? We were just laughing, joking, carrying on, having a good time. Now all of a sudden you're fucking crying. What happened?
Right.
You know,
Same here. I used to always laugh with people, man. Like, if I'm picking Henny that night, I'm fighting somebody. I might go to jail, but I'm definitely fighting somebody. But if I'm drinking something else, I might get all cryy. So yeah,
a lot of people feel that way about tequila, you know, because I do believe different alcohol affects different people different ways. Like that fucking Jaeger, man, that definitely had a different effect on me than just drinking some beers or whatever. But anyway, that does bring us, y'all, to our final, I don't know if you'd even call this a meme, but I lifted this off social media and I thought it was a perfect way to wrap up today's show because that's exactly what we did, was a lot of storytelling. And I got to tell you, man, I'm looking, we got people who've been hanging with us this whole entire show, and we had another long one, you know. Yeah, we went, you know, a long, you know, distance with this show, almost 2 hours and 45 minutes by the time we wrap up. And a lot of storytelling. And like it says here, storytelling and marketing simply makes your business more human. And not that we're trying to push the Dare Me podcast as a business. We certainly don't generate any revenue from this or profit or anything else. In fact, there's real expenses involved in doing this thing. You know, so it ain't about that. The point is that you tell stories. You get vulnerable, you know. I bring up that boy Kasky and Anonymous a lot, Shivang, and you know, you and I and that boy Brendan went to that music summit they put on, and that was one of the biggest things I walked away from with that thing is just be vulnerable, man. You know, if you're constantly out there pushing your product or service, people do put the defenses up, and so we try to be vulnerable. Even when I post shit on social media throughout the week, you know, I put stuff out there that ain't always about promoting the Dare Me podcast. You know, I'll put this out, that out, whatever, and try to be vulnerable and, you know, put things even out there about my personal life. And then I'll slip in, hey, and by the way, we're doing the Dare Me podcast. And so, anyhow, with all that said, we did do a lot of storytelling on here today. I hope sincerely that if you're a person who's been struggling with addiction, you came across our stuff by chance, you're looking for a way out, you want to get clean, or maybe you're a person who's been living clean, maybe even struggling to stay clean, and you came across our stuff. We hope that anything we might have talked about on today's show will be inspirational to you. And as I always usually say on this show near the end, if you came across our stuff and you're going through withdrawals, trying to kick opiates maybe specifically, or benzos, and you're laying in bed sick as fuck, you got no motivation, you feel like fucking dying or whatever, hopefully at the very least we help to kill some time for you, because when you're kicking, man, that clock does move at a snail's pace, and you go through this internal battle of wanting to get up and go out and get some dope, or just staying put so you get the shit out of your body and start feeling better so you can get on with your life. So hopefully at the very least we killed almost a few hours for you of what hopefully is fun content, inspirational content, and content that we hope is relevant to trying to get and or stay and live clean and sober. So with all that said, Shivang, I want to thank you so much, bro.
Man, thank you so much, and thank you and Dean for having me. And like you said, man, if anybody's struggling, going through hell, keep fucking going. Thou too shall pass. And, if anything that me or Glenn said was helpful, then I think our mission here is accomplished. You know, if we could have saved one person,
Well, I got to say, and pardon the phrase, y'all, I don't say this disrespectfully, but Shivang, you popped our cherry on the Dare Me podcast because you literally are our first in-studio guest.
It's a blessing.
20 episodes later, we've been set up to do it all along. And as you know, I've got some really cool local guests on that lined up that I want to have on the show. You went to that album release party with me last weekend for Moving Forward Music. Yeah, we want to have Tyler and Josh
Tyler,
on.
Josh, man.
Yeah, shout out Mr. G, shout out Max 17, shout out Spittles. We got a bunch of people we want to have on locally. And so now that you were our first in-studio guest, and I think it kind of went off without a hitch, your mic's working good, camera shot's not so bad, we'll start getting some more local guests here in the Sacramento area in the studio on the show. So thank you again, Shivang. It's so wonderful having my buddy, my best buddy Shivang in town.
Try not to get filled up here,
man, running me ragged, though. But you know what's cool, man, is we get along. We have lively conversation, and sometimes, it's like, hey, you go off and do your thing, I go off and do mine, and, we're just here vibing, and then we're going to head off to Miami here in about a week or so and hit that convention, and then Shivang will be back up in Detroit, and then I come back to Sac for a week after Miami, and then I go to Detroit for my nephew and his beautiful wife's reception. And I'll see you there, and hopefully we can have you on the podcast when we do one live from Detroit City that weekend,
Awesome.
So, anyhow, with all that said, Dean, anything you'd like to add before we wrap up? Appreciate your patience with us today, bro.
Good show tonight. I definitely want to put Mount Shasta on my list, on my bucket list.
Yeah, put it on that bucket list, yeah. And Kelly, want to say thank you to you. Man, looks like Kelly hung with us the whole show. She just chimed in the chat. Great show once again. Have a great rest of your night, boys. Thank you. We love you to death, Kelly. And Dean, thank you again. A rock star as usual, man. Everything went off without a hitch. And so, in closing, just want to say this has kind of become, our little saying at the end of the show, y'all. And Dean, I did see your Facebook post the other day. I appreciate it. That made me laugh, man. If you're going through hell, you're going through addiction, keep fucking going, If you're one of them people like I talked about, laying in bed, going through opiate withdrawals or withdrawals from any drug, trying to kick it, man, we've been there, haven't we, Shivang? We know what it's like.
We've been there, man.
Yeah,
and,
it's
you'll
no
get
joke.
through it. You'll get through it. And you'll come out with a new sense of wisdom, hopefully.
Yeah, if you make your mind up, thank you, bro. And if you really want to do it, you can get through it. If we can do it, you can do it. We help each other, man. Like I like saying, my sponsor Shay, man, who Shivang got to meet, by the way.
Man.
Yeah,
Such
shout out
sweetheart.
Shay. She told me when I first asked her to sponsor, because it takes a little humility to do that. She said, Glenn, you've been around long enough. We don't do this alone, And so that's a part of the whole recovery process. We'll talk more about on a later edition of the podcast, because we can talk about that for a long time. If you're a person, again, struggling, just hang in there, man. Just keep going, because it will get better. You got to get that shit out of your system and then start working on, getting your thinking straight, because that's a part of it too. So anyway, with all that said, we really hope you enjoyed today's edition of the show. I hope you maybe do, like Dean just said, go visit Mount Shasta sometime, because, y'all, it was an experience. I'll say this, I will never, ever forget. So anyway, with all that said, y'all, have a great night, have a great rest of the week, and we hope to see you next time on the Dare Me podcast.
Good night.
You